Should be here in about 10 or 15 minutes. And Mr. Barca is not here this evening, so when it comes to voting, we'll only have 8 voting members tonight. Any review or additions to tonight's agenda? I do have one item. I'm going to go ahead and do it now. I had an opportunity to speak earlier this week with Superintendent O'Connell, Ms. Kleiner, John Brunell, and we are going to adjust the budget hearing date from Tuesday, January 14th to Thursday, January 16th.
Oh, that makes sense.
It was a mistake on my part that we are voting on Thursday, January 9th on the warrant articles, and those need to be posted for 7 days before we have a budget hearing. So we're confirmed in the auditorium, 7 p.m. on the 16th, LCTV in the school, and everyone has confirmed that.
I didn't even realize it was on a Tuesday, because they've always been on Thursdays.
I don't know how that happened. That was my fault. So the 16th, we'll make sure that gets updated on the town calendar and gets communicated out.
Do you want a pencil?
With that,
Need a pen?
sure. You need a pen?
I have
I
pencils.
got about half a dozen. Yeah, sure.
That, I'll open it up for public input. Anyone in the audience care to join for public input? Seeing none, I'll close public input. We'll have a second public input session after our business this evening. Next on the agenda, we have correspondence. Thank you to Mr. Taylor for pulling this together since our last meeting. I'll read through this briefly. On November 22nd, Heather Sneman sent the budget report for 11/22/24, attached with the special fund balances and budget revenues for October. On November 23rd, an email thread started between resident Ron Oblinus, Andrew Cutter, and Brian O'Connell was sent clarifying the FY25 school budget number. This thread continued through November 26th with Mr. Oblinus thanking Mr. Cutter and Mr. O'Connell for their explanations and responses. On November 27th, Chair Sun forwarded a memo from Ms. Kleiner regarding the 2023 unassigned fund balance. On November 30th, Matt Sullivan sent the budget committee meetings from November 21st. On December 2nd, Chair Sun sent the agenda for the budget committee meeting on 12/5. On December 3rd, Ms. Kleiner sent an email with the new town hall hours. And then on December 4th, Chair Sun sent an email about the need to change the budget hearing date, and details will be provided in the December 5th meeting. That is our correspondence since our last meeting on the 21st, 2 weeks ago. Next, we have review and acceptance of minutes. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes from November 21st? We have a motion to approve those minutes.
So, second.
Motion by Mr. Burke, second by Ms. Douglas. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstain. Motion carries 7-0-0. Before we jump into our main act tonight, which is school budget voting, we'll quickly do any updates from the town. Mr. O'Leary?
Let's see. Yeah, the town had, the building inspector abruptly resigned the other day.
What is it with you guys?
In his letter, which was dropped off at 5:30 in the morning, before anybody else was here, he just said he had an opportunity he couldn't pass up.
So not even a 2 weeks
No
notice?
notice, no nothing, no. So he loses some earned time. Because that's a new policy that we have. On a lighter note, veterans at the cemetery yesterday, with the help of the middle school and all the school personnel that were there, laid the wreaths at the veterans' graves, which was really nice. What, the third or fourth year you guys done it with you? Yeah. So that was really good.
It was at both cemeteries this year, right?
Both cemeteries, yeah. They did one in the afternoon at Hillcrest. But it's always nice to see the kids marching over from the school. It's really pretty cool. If no one's ever seen it, they should.
My oldest told me she was proud she got to do one of the wreaths. She was excited about that.
That was awesome. Yeah, thanks to the kids and the superintendent and all the staff for allowing this to happen. And the last thing is Spirit of Litchfield. Saturday is the Christmas display at Dara, and they have raised the money for the fireworks, and we got snow and rain, so it looks like they'll happen. So if anyone's around and wants to go, it's a good time. That's all I got.
Saturday's a busy day in town. I know we've got Friday night's the parade. Saturday morning is breakfast with Santa at CHS, and then Spirit of Litchfield Saturday night. So busy weekend in town.
All good stuff.
Any questions for Mr. O'Leary? Okay. With that, we will move into school business. I'm going to jump right into kind of our flow for this evening. Just to recap for those watching at home, we've spent the last few meetings a couple of joint sessions with the school board, and then the last budget committee meeting on November 21st, doing a review of the school budget, having an opportunity to ask questions. Done that in conjunction with the administration, as well as online via some Google Sheets. Tonight's purpose is to entertain any motions for the school budget. We'll follow the same flow as we did for the review. We'll start with the schools, go through GMS, LMS, and CHS, and then move through the various departments. Just a side note, we do have a meeting scheduled next week to continue the school voting process. As we progress through the evening, I'll kind of leave it up to the will of the committee to see how far we get and how late we want to go this evening as to whether we will need next week's meeting or not. That's my current plan.
Mr. Chair, can I
Yes.
add one thing to my report?
Yes, sir.
Before people start calling in despair, we have appointed Selectman Lynch as the temporary emergency building inspector. He formerly filled the position in the town. We had reached out to MRI, which supplies us with personnel when we need them, but they have nobody and don't know when they would get anybody, so we were really in a bind, and whereas Kevin was agreeable to do it on a part-time basis, he can only work 24 hours a week right now, so, but we did appoint him to fill the role until we fill it.
We nominate Mr. Lynch.
Mr. Lynch?
I'm just saying, that's just, I love it, the irony of past years is not lost on me.
Yes. And a few people.
Thank you, Mr. Lear.
Yep.
All right, so with that, we're going to jump into school budget voting. My plan is we'll start with GMS. I am not going to go line by line. We will.
Well, I have a question before we start.
Yep.
So I tend to look at the budget holistically. We know that we're, $1.7 million up. We do not have the 500 grand offset, so it's really 2 point something in spending increase. I've been reading that special ed reimbursements are down. So what are our revenues forecast for next year? Are we anticipating a significant reduction in state aid? So I have an idea of what type of an increase are we actually looking at?
I'll invite Superintendent and BA up if you all want to.
Yeah, and you're welcome to come to the
Yeah,
table.
please come up to the
So
table.
it's just before I start looking at the numbers.
And can I add, before we answer that, just one quick thing? We have
Sure.
people online in
Oh.
the remote.
On the WebEx?
Yeah.
Oh,
They're saying some of them are in the lobby. It says they're in the lobby.
So some
Got it.
of our administrators who can just jump on in their sections if there's questions and stuff like that.
I am on that.
You want to take this one?
So there is going to be certainly a significant decrease in special ed aid for next year. We've been told, I think it's 67%.
It's 67% of the 80% that they reimburse us at. So that's what it's expected to be. I think our estimate is about $50,000. It will affect us, that we'll get less in special ed aid this year. That's a rough estimate.
Okay.
We won't know that officially until the year's all wrapped up and stuff like that.
But have we also seen we've seen a reduction in enrollment, so that'll also affect state aid.
It does. I mean, it's a couple $1,000s here and there. We haven't done it significant. Like when we have, it's more than a couple $1,000.
I was saying, I thought we were like 30 kids down, and at how much a piece is it?
It's about $4,000 per kid.
So it's
So
120 grand is a little more than a couple thousand.
yeah, but when we're talking 20, a huge budget.
But
that
no,
we
but it
have,
just stacks up. We're getting
Yeah.
now to like 2.3 million.
Yeah.
The last time we had an increase of 2 million, we had three townwide hearings to determine how much people in town could actually stomach for an increase.
Yeah, I think the challenging thing, as we presented numerous times through the budget, is a lot of these contractual requirements that we have is what is accounting for this increase in our budget.
Sure.
We went through all of it. We have the contracts that were approved for the LEA last year, the LSSA last year, various other benefit increases and contracts with providers that we're doing, and that's accounting for, $1 million just in salary and benefits alone that we're committed to in that capacity. And then on top of that, we have continue rising special ed costs, continue rising costs for literally everything that we have. And that leads to these type of increases. We're seeing this across the state. School districts across the state are seeing these type of increases. I feel we're fortunate. There are other school districts that are having higher percentage increases in these type of things, and that's tough.
And I hear that, but when we look at it, like, we don't have the business base to help absorb that. This is on the backs of our neighbors and our fellow residents. It's a significant increase. And we have people, we've already heard, like we said last time we met, people are, what is it, $30,000 in, well, in, what is the appropriate? Assistance for various people in town and increased reliance on food banks. There are people on the edge. So if we're looking at a $2.3 million increase before any reductions, how many of my neighbors are gonna have to sell and move? And while some feel that selling is an appropriate response, you know, there are people in this town who are 10 generations deep. I don't want to be responsible for them moving out. So,
Well, Ms. Douglas, I mean, let's,
to me, there's a lot of structural changes. This is an opportunity when we know that there's an increase this big to look at some serious structural changes.
I think
so what you're talking about, though, is, again, very much a large portion of what the voters approved at warrant time this past March.
Sure, we also had an unusual $500,000 reduction that kind of masked the increase, which we highlighted last year.
Which was the land
It's
that
a
we,
one-
that
so,
we
again-
committed to returning to the taxpayers.
But
I
it-
just want to be clear on what
I'm
this
not
is.
saying it is not, but what I'm saying is it masked the increase. People didn't feel, so my concern is we can go through all this and you're gonna end up with a default budget. Because I know, I don't see any numbers in here compelling me to support a $2.7 million increase. I'm gonna tell you
So
right now.
let's go back to your original question, which was about revenues and what might look different next year for revenues. Is that, I heard the special education difference that we're looking at. Are there any other changes in revenues that we might see for next year?
I mean, Ms. Douglas is right. We have a slight decrease in enrollment, so that is going to require a slight decrease in our revenue when we get state aid for these type of things. You know, we are not anticipating as high of a deficit when it comes to food service, so that probably is a wash in this conversation that we're having right now, because that's just a projection on that. That could go in either direction. This district's operated with that deficit for a few years now. And we, at this point, think it will be, you know, about the same, maybe a little bit less, but that's just an optimistic guess at this point, halfway through the school year. But yeah, the state aid, when it comes to the special ed, is gonna hurt us. I mean, we're trying to look at some creative ways to raise revenue, you know? I don't want to talk too out of school on some of those, because some of those are kind of private discussions with different
Absolutely.
entities. But, you know, we're gonna try and figure out some small things here and there to offset some of these kind of decrease in revenues that we have. But this is, again, a real problem that everyone across the state is facing.
Because, I mean, last time we looked at 2 million, it was what, $900 a tax bill. We have more people in town and things have gone up, assessments have gone up. But this is not gonna be a small bite into people's budgets. At a time when we're looking for investments in aging buildings, we're looking for a solution to GMS. This money is gonna crowd out our options. We really need to look at structural, when we know that there's this big of a deficit, change. Oh, that was weird.
Okay.
That we should capitalize on it to look at where we can truly streamline and more efficiently use the money, the resources, because if we use them all up here, there is no renovations to GMS.
Well, I think as we
There
go
are
through
no
the
big
budget, we'll be
upgrades.
very interested in your thoughts.
Well, so I'm just saying, I look at this holistically, I see where we are, and I'm very concerned that we're gonna go through the exercise and still end up with a default budget. So,
Okay.
Can I ask, of your increases, how much of it is actually contractual, the contracts that passed
1.1.
plus?
This was 1.1 of the 1.7.
1.1? Okay.
We do have now our guest joining us on the WebEx, so thank you to Mr. Brunel for running over and getting that turned on.
I'd also like to just take the opportunity to remind the Budget Committee that when the superintendent took his first shot at reviewing the budget, there was decisions made to remove positions that were unfilled, that historically have been in the budget. So that, when the budget that you're seeing does actually include removal of positions that we have been trying to fill that were unfilled. That's in there. Additionally, the board has made, we went through our deliberations of this budget in our process, and that resulted in reductions of the budget of $105,000 across multiple lines.
on 26 million, we came up with 100 and how many?
105,000. And if you could drop the tone, I would really appreciate it.
Okay.
I'm just saying, I appreciate that you're,
You're welcome.
that's excited about that, it's,
I am excited about that.
Okay,
Jerry, because we
let's-
actually deliberated quite at length for hours and tried to find where we're gonna make significant cuts without impacting the educational abilities for our
Okay,
students.
let's transition into our budgets now. We have all of our guests on here. There's no other additional comments from superintendent of the BA. We're gonna jump into GMS. Good?
Very good.
All right, so welcome, Mr. Taylor. And I did check, our guest online can hear us, so as we move through, the first budget we're going through is GMS. Mr. Mitchell is here. If there's any questions that come up on any motions, Mr. Mitchell is available to answer those. So we're gonna start with GMS. Do I have any motions this evening as it pertains to the budget for GMS? Like sufficient wait time? Seeing none. At this time, we will move to LMS. Do I have any motions this evening for LMS?
So remind me, the on page 2, LMS, the $3,600 for, was it 3560. That's one basketball hoop for outside?
I believe so, yes. I don't know if Jen's on right this second.
Yeah, the way that was described is it's a commercial.
Now, I understand how it's described,
She is
just,
on.
given the size of the increase, I wonder if that would not be an expense that would be better used for end-of-year funds or fundraising. When the GMS did a lot of their work at the playground, there was fundraising involved. And while I understand that this is something we'd like to have, $2.some million increase. So I would like to make a reduction of $3,000 on that line.
And this is
610.
line 610 under
I-
physical education.
To be fair, I'm gonna leave it there before,
So I have a motion from Ms. Douglas to reduce line 610 under physical education at LMS by $3,000. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Leary. Discussion.
Now-
It's on page 2. It's in
I
the
will
middle of
admit, I
page
don't,
2.
my kids are not athletes, so I haven't had to purchase a backboard in a while. But even if we had to get multiple of the cheapos, we're still saving money there. So to me, this is an excellent opportunity for fundraising, for some kind of PTO kind of investment. But we can't keep going to, the taxpayers are being asked to absorb a lot right now. And so to me, we need to look at areas where the
updated
parents
ones.
and the community can kick in without having to go to the taxpayers first.
Ms. Grantham, I see you've come off mute. Anything you'd like to add about this? Sorry, can you say that again, Ms. Grantham?
in grades 5, 6, 7, and 8, and there's nowhere on the facility, on the property, to be able to get that outdoor activity, other than the walking lounge. Was our request in adding something for the kids to do outside to use outdoor recess.
Would there be an opportunity to paint Foursquare? A couple of painting some lines and a ball would be significantly less expensive and would get a lot more kids active.
Does physical ed, does recess, where would recess currently fit into the schedule at LMS if this were put in?
It fits in during our best one. It's outdoor activity time for staff of all teachers instead of providing outdoor back. Exactly what we've done was we use the balls, equipment to be able to toss outside to used during that. For fifth grade, it's the first half of best before lunch. They have the Corey time, which is the social emotional learning time, and then there's outdoor experience.
experience right now is outdoor walk.
We're trying to incorporate that equipment to be able to have
something for them to be able to do.
Okay.
So it's not recess.
It's not reset, it's a part of best,
They
right?
don't have the content recess.
Yeah, that's where I was confused a little bit. Okay, that helps though. Thank you.
I'm not saying that I disagree with the intent. I'm just saying that I think we should look at alternative methods of funding when we're looking at already going to the taxpayers for a lot of money.
Any additional discussion on this item this evening?
I understand they want to get an industrial basketball, but I think you can get one that's gonna be durable and sturdy and you can use for a lot less than 3600. Not a lot less,
Are you and I gonna kind of agree on something?
kind of. But I don't know if even 600 is enough.
Then adjust it, but I think 36 is too much. Like I said, I haven't had to purchase a backboard in a long time. My kids are robotics and programmers. We're not basketball.
Is
I
that
guess
it?
that's my next question. Has the
The
backboard
reason
been
for the price of that backboard is designed for outdoor so knowing that we wouldn't have things on the outdoor play or on the outdoor space for people to be able to use, kids being able to come and use that space on the weekends or outside of the regular school day, we wanted to make sure it was sturdy enough to be able to handle park play by students.
But isn't GMS available for that? And don't they have backboards? So there's, to me, I appreciate the sentiment, but I think those resources already exist in town. So to me, I appreciate what we're trying to do. And I
you, John.
think it's great to try to get the kids some, I'm sure the teachers would love to have the kids burn off some energy. I just think we need to find ways.
Is there, Brian, were you gonna do an amendment or?
Yeah. I'd like to amend it to 2000.
A reduction of 2,000?
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a motion to amend line 610 under LMS physical education, the reduction of $2,000. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I'll give, yeah.
Who was the second? I
No,
missed it.
Mr.
Hayes.
Mr.
Thank
Hayes.
you.
yeah.
Discussion on the motion to amend.
I just think that's gonna leave about $1,600 to buy the backboard.
I think that's a more reasonable amount. Any additional discussion?
I think that is, I'm willing to go with that.
Okay. We'll do roll call. This is on the motion to amend. Mr. Hayes?
No.
Mr. Cutter?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Douglas?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Mr. LaPlante?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
And Mr. Burke? Motion carries 7-1. So now we will vote on the actual motion to reduce line 610 under LMS physical education by $2,000. Roll call again. Mr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Cutter?
No.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Douglas?
Yes.
I am a yes. Mr. LaPlante?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
And Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-1. Any additional motions for LMS this evening?
Question.
Yep.
Line 610 supplies growing produce.
What page is that, Mr. Leary?
It's same page,
Same page.
right below it.
If you weren't going after that one, or saying something about it, I
To
was.
return to the LMS food service, $5,000. What is that?
Jen, you want to talk about the garden?
The garden, can you speak to that, please?
That is the hydroponic garden that we had investigated with Mr. Tully in regards to being able to produce 20 pounds of lettuce a month. It's part of our sustainability course that we have in your Unified Arts. Our sustainability course would be able to grow and learn about the growth process in hydroponics and gardening and sustainable gardening, while returning up to 20 pounds of lettuce a month at a significant reduction in price when she is faced with the increasing prices we all are. It's something that we could locally farm that those ingredients that can be used right in our own kitchen at LMS. We had applied for a grant that we did not get for that, so that is why it is still there.
How big is the garden? How large is it?
It's
To harvest
it's a
20 pounds of
wall-
lettuce a month. It's what?
It's a wall unit that's about 5 feet long by about 6 feet tall, on wheels that rolls.
You're not gonna get 20 pounds of lettuce a month out of that.
Well, if it's wet.
Well, have we talked to the local community to see if anybody could would be willing to support or sponsor such a thing? I mean,
I was gonna ask about a partnership with McQuestion.
partnership with something. I mean, it's not like we don't have farms in the area. My other question would be, is this a one-time purchase, or is this something that would be requiring additional purchasing
It's gonna be
for?
every year.
No, it would be a one-time purchase for the garden itself, and then the seeds and things like that would be by donation forward.
So
So
the
it would be a very one-time purchase.
So the 5,000 would be the one-time cost, and then about 1,350 of recurring cost.
Correct, over the course of the year.
I just think some of these things I think would be wonderful community wish list items.
It's not that expensive.
We'd have to produce a lot of lettuce to offset $5,000. So, again, point some million dollars. To me, I appreciate the idea. I love it. I just don't think now is the time. So I will propose a reduction of $5,000 for line 610 on page 2.
I have a motion by Ms. Douglas.
I'll second the discussion, if you're gonna do that,
You gotta take the other,
get the other stuff up.
What other stuff was with it?
The
Right below it.
1350.
So the whole thing? All right, then
Oh, no.
withdraw your, if you wouldn't mind withdrawing your second.
Withdraw your second.
I'll make a motion to reduce it by 6,350 or 49, so you leave $1 in there.
Can I clarify, does that wipe that line completely?
No, it would leave $1 in there. So I have a motion by Ms. Douglas, second. Second by Mr. Burke, discussion. Ms. Grantham, the motion was to reduce it by $6,349.
Recycle, yeah, the whole thing.
So to clarify, the 1350 was not just for the hydroponics, that was also for other materials for that course. Equipment and materials for the course that is a year-long course for students in 6th and 7th.
So the
Was the 5,000 the right number then?
Yes.
So 5,000 is the purchase price and the recurring cost, not the 1350 is not a part of that.
1350 is not part of that price
Okay.
for the
I'll make-
for the seeds and.
I'm gonna make a motion. I'm gonna make a motion to amend and reduce line 610 supplies under consumer science by $5,000.
I will second, because that was my original proposal.
Discussion. All right, discussion. So even though I made the motion to amend, I really wanted to get to the discussion. I actually like this idea. I think it is. I think it's a great opportunity for our students. I hope that if this passes and it's something that's a part of the sustainability course, that we're able to partner with a local farm in town, and there's some good community relations that come out of that. My question is, I don't know if 5,000 is the right amount. I am not an expert in hydroponic walls, but I'm doing a little bit of research, and it seems there's some varying prices on what that is. That seems a little high for me, but
I mean, a lot of schools have garden beds that are put in by volunteers, so, but hydroponics would be, and then you have the electrical expenses. What happens, does it get drained in the winter? What do we?
It's an inside, it's meant to be inside. So it doesn't have to drain, there's no freezing because it's inside the building. It uses a small quantity of water to cycle through and just has to be filtered and drained with as it works through. The drain on electricity is also minimal because it is meant to be that sustainable idea to tie in with the I hate to say the word solar panels, but I'll say it just because it's fun to.
I was gonna say, there shouldn't be much, we have these solar panels.
so my question on this would be, I would love to see a breakdown of what is the cost for the one-time cost on this, and then what would be the ongoing of the 5,000. What's the one-time cost? What's the ongoing recurring cost? Because I see in my brief research I'm doing here, I see cost for these kits anywhere from $1,000 to $1,500. So does that mean our recurring costs are $3,500? Like the seeds and stuff are that much? That's That's
No,
what I
this-
don't,
I
I don't.
have the quote, in my file at school, which I can forward on to you if you're interested.
Okay, yes, please, thank you. I'm not willing to cut this just yet. I would like some more information on it. The number seems high, I think there's value to this.
Put it as a warrant article. Let people decide if they want to add it. It's an added, we could go back to the whole slight expansion of services if you'd like.
Revisit it too.
We can revisit it, it could be a warrant article, let people vote directly.
There's a class and things to go along with it, it's not a one-time.
Yeah.
It's insane when we throw warrant articles like that.
Well, you could say,
Getting the budget. and
we're gonna, but we could be upfront about that, like, would you be willing to invest this knowing that the initial investment is $5,000 and the ongoing cost in perpetuity will be $2,000? So you just tell people, if they say, sure, that's something I wanna support, let's vote for it, fine, but to put it in a budget like this where just we get to vote on it, I don't like it.
Any other discussion on the motion, which the motion to amend is to reduce the line by $5,000?
Just one comment, I'd be okay with waiting, getting some more information. Making an informed decision.
I'd be okay with voting.
Just a side note, I have been getting messages from Mr. Plansky's wife during this discussion. She's connecting the dots to the LMS community garden as well. There's another connection for this, connecting to the local community. So
That's a brilliant.
I'm actually going to withdraw my motion to amend.
Right.
Draw a second.
Withdraw my second, but then I will re-motion it to reduce it to $5,000.
Motion.
Reduce the original one to $5,000.
Are you officially making that motion?
I'm officially making that motion.
Okay, second.
it.
All right, we've had discussion on this, so I'm going to roll call vote on this. So the motion is to reduce it by $5,000. Mr. Hayes,
Considering where we are, yes.
Mr. Cutter,
No.
Mr. Leary,
Yes, with the option to revisit.
Ms. Douglas.
Yes.
I am a no. Mr. LaPlante,
No.
Mr. Taylor,
No.
and Mr. Burke. Motion fails 3-5. Yes, Mrs. Grantham said she would pass along the quote that she has for this, which we can certainly come back and revisit that.
Is it worth getting another quote too? I mean, is there another resource to be able to just check the original price? Do you get more than one?
We definitely have looked at more than one quote. The garden that was presented here is one that is allowable to be circulated back into the food service program. So this was in partnership with Ms. Crowley and a presentation that had been presented to statewide food service programs to be able to cycle that food back into there are specific parameters in regards to how you grow the food
That's why
that
it's more
is
expensive.
utilized
Yeah.
back in the kitchen with students.
Yeah, to meet the food requirements to serve the lunch to kids is why it's going to be more expensive. Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Grantham. Any other motions this evening on LMS?
Where are the planners? There are planners somewhere in here, aren't there?
What was it again?
We're in
Those,
610 supplies, I believe, on page 1.
look at that. Page 1. 610.
Yep.
Yep, the student agendas, $1,850. Well, I appreciate, all right, I'm gonna make a motion to reduce the line by $1,850.
I have a motion by Ms. Douglas. Do I have a second?
Is it on?
This is line 610 supplies under LMS regular education,
Page
page
one.
1. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second for discussion.
Second by Mr. Leary. Discussion?
So, do you guys use Google in your classrooms, right? Which has a built-in planner, if you go to right? Does it
There
not?
is a feature in Google Classroom, for example, that students can use that. They
Right.
have their own
So there,
Chromebooks, yes.
yes, I mean, I've seen it in my own, and I don't know what your student, system looks like. Our grade book has a built-in planner function.
Yeah, I would not
So I'm just
utilize the
saying-
Power School one.
So what I'm just saying is, there are options available, and I get that we would like everyone to have one and learn one, but now we're telling everybody they have to have the same one. Some kids will use it, some kids won't. So I would think that if we truly wanted to propose, like, you could offer them up for sale to the parents for $5, 10, whatever. What are we saying they are? We're saying they're $5 a piece. For $5, you can have an LMS special one, Or if you really want one, you can go to the nearest paper store, Walmart, whatever, Target, pick one up that matches your child's identity and personality. But I don't know that the taxpayers need to be funding that.
Let's go back to that notebook.
Yes.
Yeah, like the small notebook.
And had had like squares where you like they filled in.
Yes.
Some variation of that, yeah.
So if I may.
Yep.
The agendas were, the board talked about this during our own deliberations, and this was a direct request from parents, back to paper and pencil.
Sure.
Where students really needed the ability to write and to keep track of their daily tasks.
And I'm not disagreeing with that.
And the administration felt it was very important to have this in the budget to give students the opportunity to keep track of their homework assignments.
Why?
So if I can just interrupt, if I'm not mistaken, in LMS,
Hold on, Jen, we see you.
Yeah, I got you, Jen. After Brian.
at LMS, they generally at the beginning of the year say you need like 5 or 6, whatever it is, notebooks, one for each class, correct?
Typically folders or notebooks, yes.
Nope, I remember
School supply
notebooks.
list.
There was like a lot of notebooks. So I mean, if you can have a notebook for each class, you can just write your agenda items in there.
I don't disagree with you.
Or if you truly want an LMS one, you can ask parents to contribute $5 and we'll give it to you.
And I just wanted to add one comment before, and then Ms. Grantham, I think, you know, I have a kid that's in 6th grade. I think there's value in this in 5th and 6th grade. I'm not sure about 7th and 8th grade. I think part of that has to do with Chromebooks go home 7th and 8th grade. They don't go home 5th and 6th
I'm actually
grade.
going to disagree with that one.
So I think that's part of it.
Because I have one kid who's perfectly fine with that, and I have another kid who had to write it down, see it on writing, because you have the act of physically writing it down to remember. You have to go look. There's so many different senses. I get it, and I'm not disputing the value of a paper planner. I'm disputing who should pay for it.
Fair.
All right, Jen, please.
Yeah, Ms. Grantham.
So the reason that we added this back, and this was definitely, Mr. Sun and Mr. Cutter are both correct. This was an outcry from the parents and the teachers both, because we did make a choice to try to have some cost savings in regards to Chromebook damage, and do not send them home any longer with 5th and 6th grade. There's the potential to not send them home with 7th grade next year as we transition, Ms. Douglas, back to that paper pencil idea, with the idea of kind of old school is the way to really ingrain that knowledge and understanding in kids' minds. They're utilizing the Chromebooks in the classroom during the day, but they do not take them home in the evening. So these agendas are there for students to be able to build that capacity for executive functioning and organization. To record, teachers have a designated time at the end of each period or at some point in their day or week where they have students record the homework for the week in order to be better in that line of communication with home and school. We're happy to put it on the supply list. It just, for the kids who can't afford it, we wanted to make sure your concern, as you've mentioned, about families that can't afford things. We are aware that there are some who are struggling and want to be able to have that resource available to those families as well.
Any additional discussion?
The first meetings. I mean, we went to the Chromebooks right across, and now all of a sudden we don't let them take them home. We're going to keep them here.
I think, I mean, for me, part of it is like 5th and 6th graders. It's kind of what Ms. Grantham said. Like, if 5th and 6th graders aren't taking their Chromebooks home, I think they need, because then it becomes an equity thing of, well, if the kid doesn't have a device at home or have access to it, and they can't access Google Classroom, they do need some sort of pencil paper piece to it.
Well, and I will tell you, I don't allow computers in my classroom. And let me tell you, the atmosphere within my classroom is totally different when I have computers on an activity and when I don't. I don't allow them for a reason. And then I have kids whose penmanship stinks, so I want them to write so that they can actually be legible when they get into high school. So I applaud the idea of going back to paper and pencil.
They don't need it in high school. They don't need to write in high school.
Oh,
It's all in the
okay, so let's look, we can have a conversation later about structural changes that should probably be made, and one of them is a return to paper and pencil.
I'm going to make a motion to amend the motion at hand and reduce line 610 supplies under LMS regular education by $1,000. Second?
I'll second
Motion is
discussion.
$1,000, sorry.
Yeah, and the original motion was 1850. My motion is 1,000.
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Leary.
Second, but that's right.
170.
Discussion.
Yeah, you're leaving 1,000?
I am leaving 850.
Okay, how many,
170 planners.
So my thinking
do we have
was,
that many fifth and sixth graders?
well, my thinking was, I heard that, this is thinking about if the decision is to put it on the supply list, I want to make sure there's money in there to
So-
provide agendas for kids that need
So
it
how
provided by
about-
the school.
How about then, we have the school let us know, without letting us know people or whatever, how many people would qualify based on other federal things for it, because I highly doubt it's 170.
Even if you don't qualify, that doesn't mean you can't. There's not a need.
But I'm 170, I just,
Any discussion on
and
the
not everybody's
motion?
gonna want one anyway.
Any additional discussion on the motion motion to amend or reduce by 1,000?
Who's gonna track who gets one and who has to pay for it? No.
Roll call vote on the motion to amend. Mr. Hayes,
No.
Mr. Cutter,
Yes.
Mr. Leary,
Yes.
Ms. Douglas.
No.
I'm a yes. Mr. LaPlante,
Yes.
Mr. Taylor,
No.
and Mr. Burke.
No.
Motion fails 4-4. So we're back to our original motion to reduce by $1,850. I feel we've exhausted discussion on this. I'm going to roll call vote. Motion is to reduce by $1,850. Mr. Hayes,
Yes.
Mr. Cutter,
No.
Mr. Leary,
Yes.
Ms. Douglas.
Yes.
I am a no. Mr. LaPlante,
No.
Mr. Taylor,
Yes.
and Mr. Burke.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-3. Any additional motions for LMS this evening?
So, I'm confused by the kiln service. We have 1,400, and then reduced by a vote of due to underspend of 600, but $1,400 is still listed. Is it 800 or 600, or 1,400? Page 1.
The notes from last year, we just left the note in as reference.
Right. So, we had a spend last year of 635, and what is the reason for it to be 1,400?
I'm sorry, you're on page
Page
one.
one.
Page 1.
Mine's 433.
The board reduced this
That
by
was
$600.
I see your kiln service of 1,400, I see a reduction of 600, but I still see a number of 1,400. So either
The board reduced this by 600.
You reduced it from 2,000 to 14, or from 14 to 8?
We reduced it from 14 down another 6.
We may have just missed that.
Okay.
That could be just us.
So that
So that should be
should be 800 there.
All right.
Apologize.
Sorry about
Got it.
No, that's fine, that makes more sense, and
Any additional motions for LMS this evening?
have we considered going back to, and I know we don't like the idea, but again, I'm gonna point out, 2+ million. Once upon a time, we had student fees for material-intensive programs, clay, lumber, those kind of things. We did away with them, understandably, but we were in a better position financially at the time. Have we considered looking at participation fees for those kind of classes, knowing that they're electives?
For classes, no, we haven't considered that.
Okay.
I mean, I think you can entertain a conversation around co-curricular activities.
I mean, these are elective classes, right? They're not graduation requirements.
I would say you are required to offer elective courses. So I think you're touching some dangerous.
I think we've
I
had
don't
this,
have to offer
standards
this
there.
class,
and I
though.
think we've had these conversations before, that if you're gonna do it for, like, art class or wood class, you're gonna do it for everything as far as.
PE. Yeah, it's a slippery
Right.
slope there.
Just like if it's a pay to play, it's pay to participate. It's
Yeah.
not just sports, it's
Right.
sports and all co.
I think co-curricular is a different
The
conversation.
drama club, the chorus, the
We
band.
I appreciate your philosophy. I disagree, but I appreciate where you're coming from.
Well,
I
you
just
can
think-
disagree all you want, but I'm correct. You're gonna have to charge everyone.
We used to charge.
Anyways,
But we used to.
anyways, moving on.
You can roll your eyes, but we used to.
I am rolling my eyes because you're wrong. So let's
Moving
move
on, moving
But we
on,
used to.
moving on. Are there any additional motions this evening for LMS?
But again, it then comes back to, if we're looking at 2 million, and maybe there's some
I know.
classes that have to go.
We don't have to say it every 3 minutes. We know what we're up against.
Any additional
I
motions
appreciate it.
for LMS this evening?
Ay, ay, ay. Let's see. So, let's see, because I am actually not opposed to some of those ideas there, Brian.
Last call for any motions for LMS this evening.
So we're still, 4,500, remind me, was one, page 6. Line 610, actual uniform replacement cycle needed. That's one set of uniforms or two?
Say that again, Miss Douglas, where are you?
Line 610, page 6.
Yep.
Supplies, actual uniform replacement cycle need. Is that one team's uniforms or two?
4,500 that
It's
you're
all
referring to?
dependent on where we are in the cycle. It will vary on the number of teams.
This one's higher because it's cheerleading, correct? And those are more expensive?
Well, I think we're going to try and level it out so there's a consistent number in there. But for example, cheerleading uniforms are more expensive than, say, basketball uniforms. So we need to balance out a schedule where we're spending roughly the same amount on uniforms.
Is
every
this
single year.
competitive cheerleading or is this cheerleading for the teams?
Is cheerleading for the schools, so I would say competitive in that sense.
Well, I mean, do they go to competitions or do they?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Additionally, just to be clear, that line is also not just uniform supplies, that's also additional items like game balls, socks, nets, et cetera, that are purchased for athletics. It's a combination of factors.
That should actually be the other 4,500. There are two lines for 4,500. I could see the equipment in the first 45, but I don't think it's in the second 45.
The school board added $4,500 because this was underfunded.
We have had to transfer in order to cover regular costs based on athletic fees in the last 2 years.
Said you added money, where?
So we have FY '22, 3,900.
Uniform replacement cycle need 4,500. That was a school board addition
Okay.
to the budget.
Go ahead, Miss Douglas.
All right. So FY '22 is 3,900. FY '23 is 3,400. FY '24 is actual 4,208. And now we're going up to 13,000. We had budget of 5, so
$8,000 jump.
it's an $8,000 increase.
But it's not just uniforms, as Miss Grantham said. Part of it, if you look in there, there's a new volleyball net system to replace a broken unit that's $3,700.
Jen, how many teams you got at the middle school?
How many teams do we have? We have boys and girls soccer, we have girls volleyball, we have cross country in the fall, we have girls and boys basketball, we have girls cheerleading, we have 5 spring sports, we have track, we have baseball, softball, girls lacrosse, boys lacrosse. I believe
I
that
was trying to-
covers everybody. I'm going to miss the
13.
detailed data.
Yeah, I was trying to keep track. I believe 13, I had
13, I
12, so I must have missed one in that count there. And what was budgeted in there before was doing one of those teams per year for their uniforms. So you're essentially giving new uniforms to a team once every 12 years. In my opinion, that's not appropriate.
I don't disagree, and I think that's why we need to look at booster clubs. Because again, there's
Yeah.
certain things that, when we have people struggling, an $8,000 increase on supplies for uniforms is a tough sell.
I think this is going to come to the debate on what a school is responsible for and then what others are. I feel a school should be responsible for uniforms because
Okay.
that is part of the requirement to participate in that co-curricular
Sure.
activity.
But we could define what is a uniform.
I
Because
think
it-
for a basketball team, a
Shorts
reversible,
and a jersey.
yeah, and they're not cheap.
It depends on which ones but it all depends on what you get though, right? Like, you can get the really nice ones, in which case, then maybe the parents kick in for that. We give a basic, and you want more than that, then the team fundraises. Like, again,
But here's the deal, right? As a part of our budget process, we have the responsibility to make sure that the budget is adequately funded. Not only reducing, which is what we tried to do, but also the responsibility to increase where it's necessary. This is one of the few lines that was underfunded for years. And we
Okay.
had the discussion as a board to say, you know what? This is one of those lines that we absolutely need to increase to make sure that it's properly funded to meet the needs of the program,
Sure.
which is why it's been added to.
And we can keep going that route, and you're increasing the likelihood you're with a default budget. So we can keep it in here, and then we're back to where we started from.
And-
Harry, if you're gonna wave that
Any-
carrot all night,
Okay,
then
let's,
just go ahead.
guys, let's
I-
just move on.
Just
If-
make your bottom line
Stop.
cut and go ahead.
Guys, let's stop.
ahead.
We've heard it. The budget is up. There's no need to repeat it for the rest of the evening. The budget is up. We all know
So
that.
I'm looking for reasonable areas where things, that we can make a reduction
Save us
without.
hours of time. Go ahead.
I would, but you keep interrupting me.
I'd like to
Are there
say two
any
words.
motions? Yes.
2 words, maybe 3. This is not the year to do it. If we've been fined before, for the past, 4 years, this is not the time to raise it by that amount.
I don't mean to push back on that because I respect the process here and everything, but I do think timing is important and that maybe lead to a larger conversation here. When is the year? Because you're going to face an LEA contract next year. You're going to face significant work on multiple buildings in this district in the upcoming years. We're talking millions and millions and millions of dollars. At some point, you need to start putting some money into your school budget. I'm sorry.
Do the
Like you
band
do.
members pay for their own uniforms, or
Pay
does the
for their
school?
instruments, whether they're renting them or leasing them and
And do
those
they
type of
pay
things.
for their own uniforms, or does the school?
I mean, right now, most of our band kids will wear their own stuff in a concert.
Right, but they
Because
have
that's
to wear
tradition.
certain, black pants, white shirt.
It's usually
whatever.
like a
That's a-
royal
that's a
blue
uniform.
shirt.
Yeah, and we've talked about adding that in future years to the budget as well, if that's gonna be a requirement. I mean, these are the decisions you have, and I'm not trying to lead you, but this is what you have to weigh here, what you feel your responsibility is from a school perspective and what you offer your students.
I believe those that are participating should be paying for the uniform.
I mean, and I'm gonna have a slightly different philosophy. I think co-curriculars are such a valuable experience for our students. We need to share some of that burden with them.
It is extremely valuable, but that doesn't mean that we should pay for it, taxpayers should
Yep.
pay for it.
And I'll just reiterate what I said a couple weeks ago. And at that point, you know what, if it is that important and, you need to provide uniforms and budget for uniforms for the existing teams you have, I think it was irresponsible for the school board and the school district to add LMS lacrosse then. Because obviously you weren't taking care of what you needed to with the existing teams, and you added kerosene to the fire by adding 2 more sport teams in there.
I wasn't here for those decisions, so I'm not gonna comment. And so I'll just leave that at that, but I'm trying to work with what we have now, and trying to present a budget. So.
Any motions under
I
this?
motion to reduce it by $4,000.
So this is under, hold on just a second, Ms. Grantham. I have a motion to reduce LMS athletics 610 supplies by, what was the amount again?
$4,000.
$4,000. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Hayes. Discussion.
Still a substantial increase over past years. It demonstrates a willingness to invest, but also recognizing the elephant in the room.
Ms. Grantham?
I just wanted to speak to the other increase that was in that line that is included for the volleyball net. Our school volleyball net is in critical need of repair, is actually dangerous for our students to be playing on. It is original to the building from 1988, I believe, is when the poles were purchased. I mean, obviously there's been new nets since then, but it has topped the referees, as they've come into our volleyball games, have warned us that our net is not safe for our students to be playing on. If they spike over that net, the chance of it snapping and hurting someone is a real risk.
That was going to be my question.
Has to be
So
rigged to be.
that was going to be my question. So that is for the volleyball teams, not just PE, right? Or I assume it's used for
It's
both.
for both. Yeah, used for both.
Any additional discussion on the motion?
Sounds like an excellent end-of-year funds item.
You're assuming we're gonna have some.
Why does it have to be all or nothing right now?
It's not all or nothing.
It's
We're
just
motioning for 4,500.
4,000.
4,000.
That reduces the increase of 8,000 to 4,200. It still recognizes it's still almost 100% increase.
Was your motion for 4,000?
My motion was to reduce the,
4,000.
I'm sorry,
4,000.
to be clear, reduce the increase from 8,300 to by 4,000. My intent was to reduce, so it would leave you $9,500.
Correct. Yeah, you would have $99,673.
75, 80, 90, 85% increase still? That's still an increase.
So what's the motion to reduce?
By $4,000 to reduce line item 610 supplies, which is currently requested at $13,673 by $4,000, which would take it down to $9,673.
I think that's a great compromise.
Any additional discussion? Roll call vote. Mr. Hayes,
Yes.
Mr. Cutter,
No.
Mr. Leary,
I'm a no on this one.
Ms. Douglas.
Yes?
I am a no. Mr. LaPlante.
No.
Mr. Taylor
No.
and Mr. Burke. No. Motion fails 2-6. Any additional motions on LMS this evening?
You brought it up first.
You go for it.
All right.
Mr. Taylor?
So I'll make a motion to cut supplies line 610 by $2,000.
A motion by Mr. Taylor to reduce line 610 supplies
Is it
under
the same 610?
LMS athletics. Under LMS athletics by $2,000. Do I have a second?
Sure.
Second by Ms. Douglas. Additional discussion? Rationale? Or
Just
think-
then at that point, you know what? It's a compromise. You know what? You get to take care of more. We reduce the acceleration of it.
Any new discussion?
Mr. LaPlante credit. He was the one that whispered it.
Mr. LaPlante?
I mean, I was just trying to save the 4,000. I mean, I was trying to compromise at that point to try to cut it to 2. I won't support it either way. I mean, I'm gonna vote no for the 2,000, but, so just to be honest and upfront with it, but.
Okay. No new discussion. Roll call. Mr. Hayes, I'll recap. The motion is to reduce 610 supplies, LMS physical education by $2,000. Mr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Cutter?
No.
Mr. Leary?
I'm a yes.
Ms. Douglas?
Yes.
I am a yes. Mr. LaPlante?
No.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
And Mr. Burke?
No.
Motion carries 5-3. We're giving LMS a workover tonight. Anything else for LMS?
In honor of Mr. Cutter's support, I will not recommend cutting the porta potty line.
Thanks. Thanks for that.
Thank you, Mr. Leary, appreciate that.
Anything else for LMS this evening?
Drop one stays.
All right, we're gonna move on to CHS.
I have one for GMS, sorry. Can we go back just one question?
Nope, we
No?
can't. I'm kidding. Yes, we can. GMS.
Sorry, I missed it. When
I think we might have lost Mr. Mitchell, so if there are any follow-up questions to this, we'll make sure we capture those and maybe
No,
maybe table.
I just had to switch
Oh.
over myself.
Never mind, he's here.
The question is on page 1, under 737 furniture replacement.
Mm-hmm.
Replacement room divider, 2,400.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
The need for that this year, what's the pressing need for that this year?
So,
Mr. Mitchell?
That's based on one of our special ed rooms, and we switched locations from one classroom to another, and when we moved it, we put it together, but it was like, it's at its final move. Does that make sense? So what it acts as, it takes a large room and divides it up for students who need individual workspaces.
You're taking a large room and turning it into 2 spaces.
4 spaces, actually. It basically cuts it down. If you think about it, it's an office cubicle system.
And that's just for ultimately lack of space?
Not for lack of space, it's to take a large, like a large square room, a room that's designed to be a whole classroom, but to turn it into small individual spaces for special programming.
So these half-height, like standard half-height walls, or?
3/4. They stand, I would say, probably 5.5 feet tall.
Alright. I'll get in touch with you. I think I know a supplier.
5.5 feet tall, okay.
I think we're gonna be getting rid of a
Any
bunch.
motions?
Honestly, think about your standard office cubicle.
Yep. We just got rid of a whole bunch that nobody wanted.
And what does that provide? Is it for privacy, for noise? At 5.5 feet tall, it really can't be for noise or sound, right?
No, it's not for noise, it's to provide individual workspaces.
Just individual workspaces.
For specialized programming.
And what did you use before you moved them to this room? Where were they before you moved them to this room?
They were just in another, we converted, we had a converted classroom for, it's a specialized program. We had to switch the location of that program, so we had to move all the furniture from that, and it was fine, and we moved it, and it's, I'm using air quotes, fine now, but it's beyond its usable life.
Any additional questions, Mr. LaPlante?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Any motions? Okay, seeing none, we will move to CHS. I believe your original binders or your original packet handouts or your online digital version should work for this. You shouldn't need anything that you got from Ms. Darling this evening for this one, or anything moving forward. Do I have any motions for CHS this evening?
So the adaptive furniture on page 1 is 1 classroom, 2 library,
12,000 should be able to get to do 2 full classrooms.
right? And how many classrooms are we committing to in the long run?
I would like to do 2 a year.
So,
Until no teachers want to update their classroom.
that's a lot.
You did, Mr. has 10 last year. Was that enough to
10
do?
got us about 1.5 spaces.
So it didn't give you 2 full classrooms?
Correct.
And we don't have an idea as to how many classrooms in total. Is this like a 20-year project? Is this a 5-year project?
Yes.
Great answer.
It ranges between 5 and 20 years.
So no, gotcha.
I think the hope is that people will see this as a good decision, and more will get on board with it over time. We have some teachers who maybe are not as receptive to the adaptive furniture yet, but if they see others using it, then maybe, that
I don't
jealousy
know, my
breeds.
workbenches on wheels are awfully awesome.
Your what?
I have workbenches on wheels for my science class. They're fantastic.
that-
They were $200 a piece.
It would make me nervous, but
They're amazing. They have outlets in the side for when I use hot plates.
Any motions for CHS?
Page 4.
Yep.
We found any information from the rec commission or from the town as far as the ropes course?
So I'm glad to start this conversation. I was invited to a part of a meeting on Monday with the rec commission, superintendent BA, school board chair, to discuss kind of the future of the ropes course and funding obviously being a part of that. What I can tell you is no decision was made. It was a very healthy discussion around if essentially the school needs to determine, do they have someone that is going to want to be trained and certified and run the course? If not, then they need to come down. What I will say, coming on the other side of that conversation, is I will strongly advocate that the money stay in the budget this year. The $6,600 stay in the budget for this year, so that the school and the town have more time to determine the long term of that. And by long term, I think this is a decision that'll be made in the next 6 months. And that money's then either going to be used for continued use or to take it down, one or the other, depending on the future, depending on the decision that's made at that point. I would advocate we leave the money in there for now until they can figure that out.
What makes you think it'll be resolved in 6 months? I asked that because I brought this up over the last 4 or 5 years.
Right. I think
because
it's
I
something
want to
just.
resolve it in the next 6 months.
Well, I think from their perspective, like, how much would our insurance decrease if we didn't have this thing literally hanging over our heads?
But we wouldn't pay Primex.
Well, we must currently have insurance for it.
It's part of our.
Right, so I'm
support
saying,
projects.
yeah, so.
I mean, could it reduce it slightly? I don't think a significant amount, because of our insurance as a school insurance package,
Well, I'm just thinking too, potential lawsuit. I think we should just go over now with a knife and do it.
I think there are some there are some individuals in town and folks that aren't in town that are still very passionate about the ropes courses. And we certainly want to give them, my opinion is, we want to give them time to work with the school and the town to
Who
get
owns
this
the land?
resolved.
Is it the
The
town?
thing I brought up, like,
Can they form an organization and lease it from the town for $1?
So
Like, and that is neither the school's nor the town's responsibility?
I don't want to get a cart ahead of the horse, but one of the things that was discussed in that meeting was, is there an opportunity for some group to essentially manage the course, and outside groups could use it? There could be fees that are charged of that. There's a lot of investigation that the school has to do with that because of insurance and liability and all of that. That was a part of the discussion as well, yes.
I have
Is
a
it
meeting
really-
Monday afternoon with
Okay.
one of these people we are referencing.
Perfect.
Kind of-
Because it would be unfortunate to take it down if somebody's willing to form
Right.
a Litchfield Ropes Course Association and take it all.
There are groups in the New England area that do this,
Right.
and so I think that's a part of the discussion as well. So I would advocate we don't touch it
But
now,
yep.
and I'm confident Mr. O'Connell wants to
Well,
get this resolved as quickly as possible.
Until we get rid of it, we still have ownership and responsibilities to it, so we still, yeah. But I agree, I understand where Brian's coming from. I feel like we've been talking about this thing for 10
Again, we
years.
can also table it if there's gonna be a discussion on Monday. We may
Yeah.
have better insight by
We
the
could.
time we get closer to
A
deliberative.
little
We
bit,
can
I don't
make a
want
change
to
at that.
promise.
Again,
anything.
Right. But
possibly.
at least we'll have some.
Yeah, you'll have more information.
Additional information.
Yep.
Or at least an idea of which direction people are moving in.
Correct. Was there anything else you wanted to add on
No,
that? Any motions for CHS this evening?
I have a question, Mr. Hess. You have 72 kids attending CTE classes at different schools, Alva and Pinkerton?
Yeah, mostly Alva.
Just Alvern, right?
That's outstanding.
Some kids do go to Pinkerton, they just have some.
Oh, they self-transport, yeah.
It's good.
Awesome.
Do we force, that's the current number though, right? Do we have an idea of what next year's number is gonna look like?
We budgeted a reduction of 10
Yeah, they
kids.
did, they budgeted
62.
18,000.
Yep.
Yeah, but yeah, we discussed that even though it's a reduction, it's an increase because their tuition's gone up?
Different programs cost different.
So, you know, it's a drop in the bucket to what we pay to have these classes and hire the people. It's a bargain.
So page 13, reminder from my stuff. The athletic trainer services, 40,000. That's an increase in the contract, that 11,000, right?
Correct.
And that is because there's not an increase in hours, that's just increase in cost.
Correct.
Supply and demand, he's in demand and there's not a lot of supply, gotcha.
Is there anything else you wanted to add to that from a discussion last night?
The board will
Yes.
be considering a warrant article at our December 18th meeting to have an athletic trainer.
What happens if it gets voted down? If under the no means no
Still
law?
budget.
Yeah, it wouldn't impact this.
So
And Mr. O'Connell, I think you spoke to this, that if the warrant article passed, and I don't wanna put words in your mouth, but if you could just
Nope, you're
repeat
not.
what you said a few weeks ago?
If that warrant article is to pass, we would 100% return that $40,000.
Thank
Yep. Because that's what we're trying to accomplish.
Yep, and I appreciate you saying that.
Yep.
And the fact that I actually believe you, it's a huge thing too.
Well, if you give us what we want, then
Ever. Contrarian by nature, you know that's what can happen.
Any motions on CHS this evening? Feel like we're letting Mr. Hess off light after we went.
No, I'm sure, well, for currently, I mean, we just got this one, right? So I haven't had a chance to fully digest.
Keep going at this pace.
Dog's gonna have his legs
Oh, but you know,
We
we
have
used
next
to meet
week.
twice a week.
We have
and
next
go till
week,
11.
Mr. Taylor.
At the beginning, you said we'd maybe do some additional ones. I don't think so.
All right, this is my last call for CHS for this evening.
Yeah.
All right.
So, the athletics, page 24, it crosses into 25. This increases, we've added lacrosse into this budget, right?
not at the high school,
Not in this year?
not at high
That's
school.
at Elvis.
It was, yeah.
Right.
All right.
Why is a trailer no longer available for the varsity football?
Why is what?
It says 2 buses now need to carry equipment since trailer is no longer available. Why? Why did we lose a trailer?
I think that's an old note. I think I remember that a couple of years
Yeah.
ago.
I can take that out.
They put all the stinky stuff on one bus and the players on the other.
Well, that's not, yeah, I'm just saying, then we get one of those landscape trailers and call it a day.
And do some
All
fundraising.
right. If there is no motions on GHS this evening, I'm going to move to HR. Just trying to find it.
Where's the end?
Near the end. Is that in here digitally?
Yes, it should be.
Oh, how does she get back in?
They're
See
having
it.
a hard time hearing it, it's just all on YouTube and texting and
Oh, I got it.
chatting.
Okay.
So,
I guess Holly got kicked out of the chat. I don't know if there's some way
Oh,
you can re-enter her or something. I don't know. how
who
that
got
works.
kicked out?
Holly Falzone,
Oh.
HR
And
director.
they're also having trouble with like echoing and all of that, so we've been. they're watching
I
on
see Mr. Ross, Mr. Mitchell, and Miss Grantham on there currently. I don't own this WebEx. It's owned back there. So you're saying they're not able to join right now?
Well, it sounds
Yeah,
like they're getting
and
kicked
they
out.
just eventually gave up because they couldn't, so they're listening on YouTube and then talking through me.
Okay.
Whatever
works.
Proxy at the moment.
Whatever works. That works. All right, let's move to the HR budget. Do I have any motions for the HR budget, which has an increase of $1,151? Okay. Seeing none. We will move to food service. This is the non-salary food service, if you're digital one. Currently has an increase of 13,460. Do I have any motions for food service this evening?
Did we get more information on the GMS food increase based on actuals?
Yes, I did speak to Ms. Crowley, and she did indicate that as far as GMS goes, she said that there was a decrease in the GMS food line about 3 years ago that was pretty drastic, she said. Since then, they have had increased enrollments in school lunches there, so she's trying to increase that budget to kind of get it back up to where it was as our numbers are increasing.
So I assume she's referencing FY 2024 budget
Yeah.
that got dropped down to 44.
The spend was-
The spend was 65.
Right.
Right.
Correct.
I feel like there was an investment in equipment that year, though.
This is the
I
food.
mean, this
item.
line
For
is
the
just
food
food,
line,
yeah.
yeah.
Food
I
item.
think they did purchase some equipment last year, if I'm remembering from discussions with her correctly, but that line that we're referencing is specifically food.
So I guess then that prompts a question. Okay, GMS, the enrollment is increasing. Okay, makes sense that then there's more food. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think this, for 2026, it's projected that CHS will have a decrease in enrollment or LMS?
CHS will have a
CHS.
slight, yeah.
Okay, so. you know,
But these-
I get that the cost of food does go up, but then obviously
Yeah.
there's a lot.
And this is based on enrollment in the school lunch program, so those
Right,
buying
I should-
lunches,
I
that
should
raw
have, yeah.
number. So it's
Sorry
not
about
just this flat-out student enrollment.
So then, in theory, there should be an offset on the revenue side if we're selling more meals?
Correct. There
should be an offset on the revenue side. If I'm understanding your,
Well, this shows the
question.
expenses. The revenue side should
so we
also
take it
have-
all food service in as revenue, because it's separate from the F10 account, right? It's its own entity. So anything we bring, I know we're presenting this
Mm-hmm. Right.
budget here as part of it, but it's its own entity. and then we bring in anything from food service as revenue,
Right.
period.
But it's
into our
not,
budget.
revenue is not reflected in this budget.
Correct. It's
So
not.
we see the increase here.
Yeah.
I should see a corresponding increase on the revenue.
Yes, yes, yeah.
Did you say Miss Crowley was on?
Lauren, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, hi, everyone. I just wanted to clarify, I think, Mr. Taylor, I think you asked a question about the GMS food line, and then I called, and then it cut out. Would you mind repeating that for me, please?
I actually got my question answered. I was just asking if then at that point there should have been a corresponding decrease in CHS based on lower enrollment, but
Right,
Mr.
right.
O'Connell
Okay,
cleared that
cool.
up.
Yes.
Okay, and then, all right, never mind. I'm just here to answer questions if needed.
Thank you, Miss Crowley.
Welcome.
Do I have any motions for food service this evening? Okay.
Maybe a comment, jumping $60,000 in 3 years is quite a hefty jump,
You're looking at the bottom line?
the bottom line, but, $60,000 in 3 years.
Well, I think part of that,
My grocery bill's gone up that much in a year.
I think
Yours went up?
Yes, but then
wanna
prices
eat
should
what
also
you're
go
eating.
up.
Mr. Leary, I think half of that is the GMS food line we were just talking about, where it had a cut down to 44 and it's up to 70, which actually I think, based on what we see in the actuals, more accurately reflects that. So I agree with you; it's a big jump. Half of that, I think, is, in what I'm reading and inferring, is that it's right sizing the GMS food amount to where it should be. Is part of that
I'm
jump.
going by 24, 25, and 26, and it's gone from 72 to 80.
Which one you're looking at? You're looking at the bottom line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a hefty jump.
Yeah, and I think it's,
Including the fact that we've subsidized this program for the last 3 years.
and I think a lot of that is food costs, and I think we feel that ourselves when we go to the grocery store, and I think this is why, like, my fingers are crossed, like, one of the big initiatives is to try and get free breakfast and lunch for all schools across the state, or I'm hoping that is one of the
Can we
initiatives.
get Jen to grow a lot more lettuce?
I did actually, just as a anecdotal side note, I was at a New Hampshire conference yesterday. Actually, Mr. Hess was there as well. And I was having lunch with some superintendents from some neighboring districts. And I actually asked the question about food service and do they operate in the negative? And the consensus was yes. This is a common issue across all schools. And it was just it was an unprompted conversation. They didn't know I had an ulterior motive, but.
I also wanted to just add into that, just as a point of reference. This March, I am the president-elect for the School Nutrition Association chapter for New Hampshire, and I will be traveling to DC to meet with our state representatives and stuff to talk about the future of school food services in New Hampshire. So my hope is to really try to see where we're at and push that kind of narrative of getting the free lunches, because it would be very, very beneficial to everybody. We wouldn't be having these problems if we were all free. So.
I mean, as a part of that discussion, I think just for general public awareness, the discussion I had yesterday, New Hampshire is the only state in the New England region that does not provide free meals for all students. Every other state around us does that. So
We're
just
also the only state with no income tax. So, and sales tax. So, again, I applaud the schools doing their job advocating. When we start talking about spending significant money, I start getting nervous because there's only really one way to pay for that, and it makes me very nervous.
do I have any motions for food service this evening? All right, seeing none, we're going to move to buildings and grounds. I know Mr. Ross is on the WebEx. Do you have any questions? Buildings and grounds. A lot of pages to it. Is currently up about $19,000. Do I have any motions for buildings and grounds?
No, we had
Mr. Ross, I'm going to mute you until we have any questions for you.
Got one question on So for under equipment, 734 on page 2, you're at, and then we talked about this prior, you're asking for 3 new floor strippers. Currently, how many do we have?
So we have one of each building, so we have three, we're asking for one.
One.
For 3 years, so with each year to get a new one.
Okay.
So that $4,900 is for one.
Yep.
That's correct. That's correct.
Gotcha.
And that'd be recurring for the next, 3 years, 2 additional years.
Is that a one-time cost, or is it 3 years at 4,900?
Yep.
It's 3 years.
Three years.
It'll be a replacement one each year for 3 years.
Yeah.
So,
for
and then
each
it
building.
goes away after 3 years, at least until you have to replace them again.
Thank you.
Any other questions or motions for buildings and grounds this evening?
Yeah, I have a question on line 622, utilities, electric.
What page is it, Mr. Hayes?
That is page number 4.
622 utilities electric,
Yep. Last year, our FY '25, this current is $73,000. If the rate for FY '26 is the same as FY '25, why are we going up from 73,000 to 78,700?
Rate's higher.
Yeah, but I thought,
That's what they
I
chose.
thought last year, the business administrator had locked in.
The rate is the same. What changed was I was looking at the 3-year average. When I looked at the 3-year average for this year, it did increase.
So are we using the building more?
I'm not sure if Dave can speak to that, as far as why the increase,
The increase shows
as
10%
far as,
over current year.
10%, it was 10%.
And then underneath there, it says that
And the school board reduced
used
it,
it by
yeah.
$1,600.
So the original line for this was 80,300. The school board reduced it by $1,600, and that's where you see the 78,700, which is an
Right, so-
increase of $5,700.
But again, why isn't it $73,000 if the rate is the same FY '25, FY '26?
I would agree with that. Mr. Ross, do you have any information on that?
I do not know. That was a calculation that we had put. So we just upped it 10% just increase.
Right, but if the rate doesn't change, the only other variable in the equation would be that you use more
Usage.
electricity.
Right.
Which I
Or-
don't think
That's-
we're using the schools more.
So that's
more
traditionally
devices.
budgeted off of a 3-year average, right?
Right.
So this 26 is a 3-year average of 22, 23,
Right.
24, right? Because that rate of 0.1156 per kilowatt, that's what's locked in, that
Right,
rate right
and the
there.
previous years we had a
And
higher.
the previous year, I'm assuming that 21 that we can't see here, when you factored it in for the 3-year average of 21, 22, 23, to get the 25 budget number,
Right.
is how you got that
All right, so what
75.
is the current run rate of FY '25?
What we're running right now?
Yeah.
I don't know, we can look that up.
The actuals in 23 were 79,472, and then the actual in 24 was $93,000.
Right, but we don't know what the rate was in those particular years.
The rate, I thought was like 17%.
The rate was higher. Mr. Totten got it. Yeah,
He started at 43, and then nearly had a conniption fit.
Now, if you wanted to tell me that the 3-year average usage, I'll take that as a number and then put it times the rate that Mr. Totten had locked in.
Yeah.
That I could go ahead and agree with. Otherwise, I'm with Mr. Hayes. I'm
Yeah, I want to see.
questioning it in terms of that
Yeah, we
10%
want to see,
increase.
we definitely want to see the run rate. I don't think 3-year averaging is appropriate here.
Not in this point, yeah,
not
because the
for
rate was
not
ridiculous.
for the dollars, but for
Right.
the usage.
Yeah, the
Yes.
usage,
Yeah,
sure.
unless we're adding more devices, more light bulbs, I mean, I think that, and we don't know where we're going to end up in FY '25. I say let's, bring it down to $73,000.
Is that a motion, Mr. Hayes?
The motion to reduce that line by 5,700.
Motion by Mr. Hayes, second.
Sure.
Second by Ms. Douglas. Any additional discussion?
So hold on, this is page.
This is page 4. This is under building services, line 622, utilities electric.
And Douglas. And your motion.
I
I understand the logic.
I understand the logic too, and I will support this tonight, but my ask would be that we
Yeah.
get those 3 years averages on the usage and have an opportunity to revisit that if the usage shows a need for the increase.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, current usage, current year, I mean, we can get that in addition to 3-year, but we need, you know, current.
Yeah, I would just ask that, I think it was mentioned 21, 22, 23, can we not use 2021
Yeah.
because the schools were closed down for periods of time?
Right,
So
yeah.
that usage information is gonna skew the number.
I agree, 23,
But
24.
if we have negotiated a lower rate, which we did, 3-year averaging really isn't appropriate. It has,
Well, on numbers, yes, but on usage, it would still, if, to Mr. Taylor's point, like 21 was an anomaly because not all kids were in.
Right.
But I think if you look at 22, 23, and 24, and you look at usage, not
Usage
necessarily
only.
dollars,
Right.
that gives us
I
better
agree.
information.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about, the rate was 17 cents, I think, so we're talking,
Right.
going to a point, that's, based on quick math, 40% reduction just in the rate.
I mean, also, if we're,
So this may not be enough of a reduction.
Exactly, if we're running a run rate of, less than $73,000.
Because
it's gonna be more of a cut.
65% is the rate we're currently paying, if you take the 93,000 at your high,
Can we call the question?
Question's been
we're talking
called.
60,000.
Motion is to reduce line 622, utilities and electric, by $5,700. Roll call vote. Mr. Hayes.
Yes.
Mr. Cutter.
No.
Mr. Leary.
Yes.
Ms. Douglas.
Yes,
I'm a yes. Mr. LaPlante.
Yes.
Mr. Taylor.
Yes.
And Mr. Burke.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-1.
yep, and I think the run rate will be telling, because I think the number's still high.
So the follow-up would be, can we get the 2022, 23, and 24 usage rates?
Try and
for
get
those
this year's
places?
as well to see.
Thank you, yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Great.
You said for CHS as well?
What was that, Mr. Hayes?
Oh, that'd be-
It's really the same story for,
We can do a similar thing for CHS, yeah.
for Campbell.
Yeah, that was just GMS.
All right, so moving on to Campbell, and again, line 622, the electric, that's page 7.
Oh, thank you.
We're up by $21,000. Again, the same thing applies to FY '25, FY '26. Rates are the same. In the explanation line, it says 10% utilities quota date received, 22,600. That represents 20%. So to me, that's an error anyway. And then the action taken by the school board reduces it by 1,600.
Which I find interesting, because it's the same number for a lower, for a
Well,
higher
the-
budget.
The board made a bottom line reduction on electric of 7,000, and it was applied by the administration across.
All right, so
Is there a motion, Mr. Hayes?
motion to reduce that 622 line by $21,000 to make it on par with FY '25. And again, if we go after usage, not dollars, but usage for 3 years, and then look at also the run rate for FY '25.
Motion by Mr. Hayes. Do I have a second?
Yeah, okay,
Second
go
by Mr. Taylor. Discussion.
And I think we're in a similar situation where this number could potentially still be high, so.
I
it's a
think
good
based on
start.
the information we have tonight, it's, this is on, Mr. Leary, this is under Campbell High School, page 7, 622, utilities, electrics, towards the bottom of page 7. Any new discussion on this?
21,000.
Seeing none, to recap, the motion is to reduce 622 utilities electric under CHS by $21,000. Roll call vote, Mr. Hayes,
Yes.
Mr. Cutter.
No.
Mr. Leary.
Revisit this after we get the run rates,
Yes, sir.
then yes.
Ms. Douglas?
Yes,
I am a yes. Mr. LaPlante?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
And Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-1. Any other motions, discussions, questions for buildings and grounds this evening?
page 8, line 422, snow plowing. Is that increase associated solely with the snow plowing contract, or is it an increase?
Just the contract,
Contract.
the second year.
We paying, I can't recall, are we paying more for propane this year?
We had
Next year?
a decrease in propane, but I believe if we had the same issue with the 3-year average
So
increasing.
you say there was a decrease in propane?
Decrease in the price of propane, but increase in the 3-year average of usage.
All right, so the usage itself.
Decreases for,
It's 309, I believe, a gallon.
Is it, what line are you looking at, Mr.?
23, page
on
7.
Page 7, line 623.
So when it says 3-year average, is that the price is the 3-year average or the quantity used is 3-year average?
The 37 gallons,
the
is what-
gallons
or 37,000 gallons.
Oh, actually.
Just curious how much it went down, though.
No, I mean, we had a warm winter last year, didn't we? I don't know. It's all blur.
We cut, the budget, 24 was 84,000, last year's budget was 72,000. So we cut about 12,000 of this last year, and this is gonna split the difference increase on that from last year. Any motions, questions? Buildings and grounds.
So do we know if what the rate is compared to what's budgeted, $1.95?
I do apologize. I believe for propane, I don't have, the rate they have not gotten back to me. I need to continue to do that. So I apologize. I don't have the correct amount there.
Can we revisit that one?
I will.
Other one. And I guess while we're at it, if we can also just get the water, I don't like the just blanket swag of 10% automatically. Who knows, water could be higher than 10%, but
Right.
if we could just get the actual rates for.
I do.
I think
So I do
water's
have-
tricky. I'm looking
Right,
for
I-
help on this one.
Water's down.
Is
Right,
tricky
with the
because of
merger, I
some
did talk,
stuff
yeah,
happening.
What was that? Sorry.
There's like a merger or something, Penachuk
Correct, and
thing
we-
that.
and-
Actually, it's on hold.
We're not allowed
It's
to.
on
talk.
it's
hold.
Yeah,
on
what
hold
is
for
it?
now.
Yeah,
So
the
at this
state
point,
told us
we're
that.
looking at the
Good.
rates.
So
with-
that is a little bit more of a guess.
Right, we
because of
can't,
all
if
that
we.
stuff.
And that's
could look
okay,
at
if
the
we
proposed.
don't know,
Yeah.
and I get that when this was put together back in late September, early October, we didn't have the rates, but if we could just get the rates so that way we can
Right.
vote on it, that would be great.
Yeah, for the propane, absolutely, yep.
And you can
absolutely.
see the FY 24 actual there for, at least I'm looking at Campbell at the bottom of page 6 was $13,504.
Mr. Hess, you use your water budget wisely.
We do what we can, you know, it's something we talk about often.
Get the rain barrels out there and stuff, yeah.
Any other motions, questions, discussion for buildings and grounds this evening?
So back to 422 on page 8. So year 2 of 3, what is encompassing in the snow plowing contract? So I guess the question would be, what is considered additional above contract?
The $2,000?
Yeah, like what does that entail? Is that like an extra snow plowing? Like what are we doing there?
It's a lot of little things, like if he has to come back to do something like that, there might be an additional cost to get up on some of the like, I don't know, it's not sidewalk, but the other concrete that's a part of front of the schools and those type of things. It's not part of the actual, like parking lot and those type of things. So any of those kind of little extras, he helps us with our salting.
But it's him
Some
doing
of our
that, not
different
our
areas.
staff doing that, right?
It's a combination of the two. So for example, this morning, we had some weather right. Our custodial staff, maintenance staff was out there taking care of walkways. As our plow guy came in, he helped with that as well. It's kind of that team effort to kind of help with whatever. If it's heavy snow and our guys can't shovel that up, he'll come through with the plow and take that stuff out for us.
And those are areas that aren't a part of the contract.
Right, they're like those little extras.
Okay.
I tell you, my kids were very disappointed they could not sleep in this morning. Just want to state that publicly.
I have been up since 3 a.m. I have been so stressed about this first call.
It was
my
definitely
gosh.
the right call. I'm just telling you what my kid's perspective of that.
That was a tough one. Okay.
Any motions, questions, discussions on buildings and grounds?
So the turf robot is still in here? Oh, you guys paid it already? Where are we on that?
We're
We're
in
not-
the second of a 3-year contract for next year, will be the second year.
Was that included in the budget last year, or is that an end of?
End of
It's an
year.
encumbrance contractual and it's rolled into the budget.
Yeah, but so this is a lease that actually hasn't been approved by the voters yet.
This is the first year.
The first
This
year.
is-
So if this vote goes down, then do we have is there an escape clause in this lease?
Wait, can I just confirm? So this is the second year, isn't it, Mr. Cutter?
This is now,
But it wasn't, it's never
Or
been
ne-
approved.
We're in the first year. Next year would be the
next year
second
will
year.
be the second year.
Right, but a lease has to be approved by an affirmative vote.
The turf robot.
So,
Page 8.
Sorry, page
so
8.
is there an escape clause in this lease?
I'll need to take a look at that.
Because if this doesn't, if we go default, we need to be able to escape this potentially. Because this hasn't been passed by an affirmative vote of the governing body.
Well, if it,
I have to go back and look.
Well, this is what we had this with the cruisers in the past, like,
I'm certain it does, Ms. Douglas, but we'd have to go back and take a look.
okay.
any,
Here's the cleanest way, obviously, is put it as a warrant article, along with other leases we used to put forward.
any other motions, discussions, or questions
So,
on
actually,
buildings?
because I believe in it strongly enough, I'm actually gonna make that proposal. The turf robot, where did I see that again?
It is
442.
page 8. It is-
Page 8,
It's under
440.
district-wide ground services,
Yeah.
page 8,
So,
442 equipment rental.
page 16, so I would make a motion to reduce the line 442 by $16,697.
That's not,
That's what it says for paid for.
no, that was year one
Oh,
payment.
so year 2 is the 14,996?
Correct. So
All right,
leave $1 in there.
14,995 then.
A motion by Ms. Douglas to reduce line 442 equipment rental under district-wide ground services by $14,995. Do I have a second?
Second with discussion.
Second by Mr. Burke.
Traditionally, leases have been put forward by the voters. They have to actually be approved by an affirmative vote of the body. If this becomes a default budget, then you lose your turf robot. If you put it up if you put it up as a warrant article, if you get a default, you can still keep your robot.
So, I have two things. I was on the understanding this was a one-year trial to see how it worked out. That's the first. The second I'll ask is, there's no way we save $14,000 in labor from doing this. I mean, that was a discussion I had with Totten when he first talked about this. And I gave my opinion. It's like, yeah, it's great to have, but there's no way that it's costing you $14,000 in labor to do those fields.
I have Mr. Ross on mute.
So I'm
Mr.
just
Ross,
wondering-
I think we just
Put it
don't
on
have
the
the
house.
person to do those fields. Like, we're down a grounds position, right? Like, if we had that grounds position filled, I wouldn't disagree with you there, but
Because you're still down.
we're
for
still down a grounds person, and we have had 0 applicants for said position.
Mr. Ross, anything you want to add to that?
No, that's correct. Being shorthanded, that is a great help. It saves us a lot of time and it pays for the paint as well.
Thank you.
Part of the contract, yes.
Because we have that robot paint.
That's a lot of money.
But it's a 40, so it's potentially what, $45,000 that we're spending without any voter ever saying, sure, let's do it. So to me,
It's because you're not paying someone $50,000 that they can't hire.
I'm all about process,
I do remember the discussion about it being a one-year trial, vaguely, but
but the process we've gone forward, whether it's cruisers or other lease items, all leases have gone before, like this, committing to long-term costs and whatnot, have gone before the voters. So to me, this shouldn't be in the budget yet until the voters approve it.
I understand the process piece of it, and I don't disagree with you on that. I think knowing where the school district is and that not having a position right now for that, and this is actually, even if not having a position to do this work right now, this is actually
Sure.
providing value to the school district right now. And even if they could hire somebody, this might be a more cost-effective way to do it.
So this benefits the football team and who else?
Football, soccer.
Lacrosse, all the fields, baseball,
Baseball,
softball.
I'm not disagreeing with your process argument. I'm just saying from a
That sounds
cost
like a fantastic
standpoint.
booster club purchase then.
Oh my
Because
God,
you're
that
ta-
booster club is busy, isn't it?
Sure is.
All right.
But why should the taxpayer pay for this? This is
Any-
a student, this is not a required item.
The clubs that don't exist, especially at LMS.
Any
Parents, if
any
you want these
additional
things, step up.
discussion?
I will just add that when I coached baseball at LMS and at Campbell, the coaches lined the fields. We got the kids to line them with us.
I remember doing that in high school too.
So it's not a big deal.
Questions
It
called.
doesn't take that long.
Have you ever lined a lacrosse field?
No.
We just don't have coaches that can get there at the right
I
time.
know, my mother-in-law used to do
All
it
right.
for the
I mean,
football
I own my
team.
own business. With all
Question,
respect, and I got there early enough to do it.
roll call vote. Mr. Hayes, just to recap, the motion is to reduce District-wide ground services, line 442, equipment rental by $14,995. I would leave $1 in that account. Mr. Hayes.
Yes, based on process.
Mr. Cutter.
No, based upon contractual language.
Mr. Leary. Mr. Leary.
He just brought up a whole new.
Engage in a contract without voter approval?
Mr.
Oh, boy.
Mr. Leary.
I'm gonna vote no because I think last year would have been the year to pull this out.
Miss
It
Douglas.
wasn't in the budget last year. It
Miss
was an end of year
Douglas.
thing.
Miss Douglas.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm a no. Mr. LaPlante.
No.
Mr. Taylor.
No.
And Mr. Burke.
No.
Motion
Well, I
fa-
was just thinking, baseball is 2 lines, right?
And the batter's box.
Motion fails. Motion fails 2-6.
Parents have lined football fields for decades.
Any
It's been done.
additional motions, discussions, or questions on buildings and grounds this evening?
So I would encourage you to check to see if there's an escape clause, because contractual, you engage in a contract without voter approval, you should sure as heck make sure you can get out of it.
Any additional motions, discussions on buildings and grounds this evening? All right.
I'd be curious about though, if I could just ask, and this maybe resolve some of your angst, is how much did we spend on paint the year before?
That's a good question.
And I can tell you, the price of paint has gone up like 30% in the last
It's a
year.
good question. Could we get
Especially where
that
they're
as a
supplying the
follow-up?
paint.
Yeah.
Something we'll have to get for you.
Mr. Ross, you may know. You might be talking.
Oh, sorry, I have you muted. Sorry, Mr. Ross.
Information to you. It's up there. It's expensive.
What, could you repeat that again, Mr. Ross? Sorry, I had you on
I'm
mute.
so sorry. Yeah, so we'll have to get the exact numbers for you. That's a real easy thing for us to do. I know it's right up there. That paint is very expensive.
Thank you.
I don't think we used paint in the past.
All right. There's no additional motions this evening on buildings and grounds. I'm going to move to business finance office. This was two pages. Currently has a reduction of $8,103. Do I have any business finance office? Sorry. Do I have any questions, discussions, motions this evening for business finance office?
I assume there's no way to try to level out line 330 on page 1 so that we don't do the 4,000 more, 4,000 under, 4,000.
Yeah, it is tricky
Work it
to-
out? No? Okay.
No, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Any other questions or motions for business finance office this evening? All right. Seeing none, we'll go to SAU.
Does emergency management come under, just to make sure, because it,
Say that again.
is emergency management also under business finance?
It
Or
is.
their own tag?
It
Okay.
is, yes.
I don't have any questions, but it's just like, it's a different account name, so I wasn't sure if we.
Yeah, it does, yes.
All right, sorry, you were wrong.
Nope, you're good. Did you have any?
No, I just
questions?
wanted, just for, just make sure we're consistent, like.
Yep.
Where are you going next?
SAU. SAU, got it. 2 pages, has a reduction of $244 currently. Do I have any discussion or questions, motions on the SAU budget? Seeing none, we'll go to curriculum. Curriculum currently 2 pages as well. Currently has a reduction of $18,841. Do I have any motions or discussions this evening on curriculum? I say this every year, and I'll say it again now in full transparency. If there are any motions in this particular budget, I will abstain due to products in this budget that are from my company.
So I have circled under 650, possible state funding for discovery education. Did we know if they shook out?
We don't know yet.
Not quite yet.
Not quite yet.
We're still waiting for our contracts.
the money is allocated in the current education budget that is on the governor's desk for review.
So before before budget hearing, we should have an idea?
Unfortunately, I don't think that unfortunately, I don't think so, because my understanding of the way the state budget will play out is that those decisions will not be made until the spring, meaning April or May timeframe. So yes, that is an unfortunate byproduct of the timing of the state budget process and local school district budgets process.
So I guess I'll ask Mr. O'Connell, can we add that to your punch list, that if that ends up being funded by the state, that money wouldn't be allocated someplace else, it would be part of the end-of-year fund potentially going back to the taxpayer?
Yeah, I think I can feel comfortable saying that.
Thanks.
Any additional
Andrew doesn't look comfortable.
Any additional discussion, questions, or motions for the curriculum budget this evening?
I was looking for the contract for the robots, though.
Your robot contract. Yeah.
Going once, going
Good
twice.
pace going, Mr. Chairman. Everybody
trying.
leave him alone, he's on a heater.
Trying.
Keep it going.
Trying. All right. If nothing else for curriculum, we are going to move to technology. Technology is 5 pages. Currently sits at a reduction from last year of $92,596. Part of that, we know, is some consolidation of, I think, some software dollars that moved to different budgets. Do I have any?
Well, the software line actually went up.
We consolidated from schools into that.
All the schools?
So there's a combination of two consolidations. We just talked about curriculum. If it was software connected to curriculum, we consolidated it to that software line. If it was software related to like more operational stuff, we consolidate it to this line right here. So like Power School, for example, instead of being split over 3 schools, it's just all in here as one account.
I misspoke, Mr. Leary. The large part of the reduction was because of equipment replacement that was in the budget last year that is not in this year's budget.
And there was one, I think it's in here, contract that I just do want to make note of because it's part of the significant reduction too. Yeah, so on page 2, the last line there, 430, the firewall costs, you paid a little over $35,000 last year for a 3-year contract. So you're not going to see it this year. You're not going to see it next year. But then 3 years from now, you'll see it back in again.
So, refresh my memory, when we talked about 5th and 6th grade students are not taking their Chromebooks home. There was discussion about potentially expanding that to 7th grade?
There's discussions. I think there are people on equal sides of that
All right,
discussion right
so
now.
the reason I'm asking here is if we're getting to the point where not all Chromebooks are going home all the time, then we should be seeing less wear and tear. Do you need to then purchase 5th grade Chromebooks every year? Could we not just have 5th grade Chromebooks, 6th grade Chromebooks?
It's a good question. I mean, most with the Chromebooks, they have about a 4-year life expectancy before they become essentially obsolete. So, you would still need to kind of probably replace that 5th grade Chromebook every 4 years. So if you did do a grade a year, and then they carried it, it physically kind of moved with them. It's kind of the same thing.
So you're still assigning a Chromebook to a child, they just can't take it home?
Exactly. So the 5th graders who are assigned a Chromebook right now, those will become the 6th grade Chromebooks that stay in the building next year and follows those kids.
Okay.
Any other questions or motions for technology?
Well, in that case, then do you still need 10 additional per class? If they're not leaving, they're not subject to as much damage, do you still need 10 additional per grade?
I mean, I think you need some additional.
Is your spares?
Right.
Well, I'm sure, but they're not subject to being, thrown when it gets home with a Chromebook.
I mean, you have to account for a couple kids who move in, right? You know what I mean, and that type of thing.
But if we
and
do
yes, kids
10
can
per
leave.
grade, that's 40 additional, right?
Yeah,
Realistically.
I'm not disputing that math and stuff.
Right.
10's the number we budgeted here.
Right, no.
Live with 5.
What's that?
We live with 5.
The board talked about that, and I actually brought this up, right? And now what we're talking about is literally, you're talking $1,000, right? The difference in pricing of 5 Chromebooks times $400 is about $1,000.
1,500, yeah.
So
If you have 5 per grade?
no, you're talking about 5 for 1 grade.
Yeah.
No, I'm talking fifth and sixth grade.
1,500 times 4,
But
it's,
you're only purchasing it for one grade.
yeah, you're right.
Right, but every grade right now has a buffer of an additional 10. Do you need an additional 10?
But we don't have that buffer because we've already used that buffer to replace. There's not a surplus of these Chromebooks because of the repairs that
So at the start of the year,
directors have already used.
right, at the start of the year, you have enough for every child plus an additional, in theory, 40. Whether they get used during,
Theory.
whether they
they've
get
already
used,
that. There's no surplus.
You don't have any extras?
There's no extras.
so,
But-
but
but
do
I
you not,
guess-
They're used up for parts and other supplies per the technology director.
Yeah, so like if a computer breaks and become, like say a Chromebook, the screen cracks, right? And it's not cost effective to replace the screen
don't we have
because
insurance, don't we have parents purchase insurance for this?
we do. And there's some offset to some of that type of stuff. And if they elect to, and if you get it, and it's like
So what happens if they
$5 the
don't
insurance
elect
for it, like it's not very expensive. Like
And do we?
we do, but like in everything, when you're trying to collect money, people don't always pay you. And we still need to move the learning forward.
Absolutely, in which case, because I seem to remember when I got one, if I didn't get one, didn't pay the insurance, something happened to the account. I could have sworn, like, there was a thing. Like,
We do those things too, but we do everything that you can imagine to try and get this stuff taken care of.
I didn't have insurance, I had to pay for screen.
well, I mean, if you choose to make that choice, like, and that's fine, but then pay the bill when it comes through.
So I guess the point, going back to what Mr. Burke said earlier, look, you know what, the district was sold on, you know what, Chromebooks means that we reduce other paper type expenses. And then we've already had a very long discussion about agendas and paper and pen. So there has to be some give and take there. And I get where Mr. Cutter's coming from, that, you know what, it's a small number against a big budget. But the point is that, you know, if you can't have both fully funded. If you want more paper and pen, then you may have to give up a couple of Chromebooks. But, you know, the 5 Chromebooks were paid for the agendas that you guys wanted. So it's just, otherwise, if you end up with both, then we're just gonna keep spending and spending.
Or we tell parents we don't have as many leftovers, so make sure your kid takes care of it. Like, come on, like,
I have a question. How many total staff in the district have laptops provided by the district?
Oh, geesh.
Because not every staff member has one, right?
Not every staff. I don't want to even speculate because I've never asked the question myself. If I am completely wrong in the statement, do not hold me to what I'm about to say. I would assume all of our professional staff have their own laptop or some sort of device. Maybe it's a Chromebook. My laptop, for example, is a little more powerful than a Chromebook, for example.
So you're saying
do you give them the option to bring
staff
in
have
No, typically not, because that's a huge security risk.
Staff.
No, I hear you, but like my school has a choice. You can get the slow, clunky school one, or you can bring your own. Mine's got touchscreen. I have my own.
staff have a choice between a Chromebook or a laptop? Is that
I have a choice as the superintendent.
At
Like-
Campbell, all of our teachers and admin, they have a laptop. Our para-educators have a Chromebook.
There we go.
okay? So the reason I ask those questions is when I look at
Was it
the top of page 4, under technology services. It's the top of page 4. Staff laptop replacements, 25 at $900 each. So those are obviously not Chromebooks. Those are the laptops that Mr. Hess was referring to, I assume.
Do we need ones that are that powerful? $900. You can get mine. It's probably like $600.
Well,
and that's what I need.
My question is, that's why I asked, like, the number of staff. Like, what is the percentage of staff that we are budgeting to replace on an annual basis? And if you don't have that information tonight,
Yeah,
that's fine. We can get that from Chris.
I know this is a combination of a couple different things, and we can ask Chris for more specific information. That when we say this replacement, some of this is for new staff who are new to the district, right? Like, so if someone leaves, then we kind of retire their laptop unless it's been, 1 year and the person's out. And some of it is trying to get on a cycle for our staff. I mean, we have 120-ish teachers in the district, so if you do that math, that's probably about once every 6 years you're going to replace one of these laptops, roughly. I'm doing some rough math right now.
Even if it's 120, you're looking at, that's a 20% once every 5 years, yeah.
That's not a bad
Yeah.
recycle.
Right.
Recycle.
Okay.
I would just question, like, what we're budgeting, is that truly what we need? Because based on what I need, and I teach science, I mean, I don't have to do graphic arts and everything. I don't need a $1,000 or $900 laptop.
You're not getting a Chromebook to last 5 years. So on their,
But
current-
even
on their current rotation, you know what?
Yes, but what I'm saying is mine is, my kid has a one that he works, it's touchscreen, it was $550. It gets what he need, like, do we need $900 laptops when there are, with the market, you can get less expensive ones? Because we run Google, you don't have to pay for
So if I
Microsoft Word.
may, can we just, before any motions are made here?
Yeah, I wasn't gonna make a motion.
Yes, absolutely, I'm just my question, before I make a reduction, is, are we over budgeting, are we providing more machine than necessary?
I guess.
feel like Mr. Jamrog addressed this during his presentations, but allow us just to double check this.
I have no confidence in capabilities of laptops, so that's a good Chris question.
So just to be, my question is like twofold, and it builds off what Ms. Douglas was saying. So first part is, what, that 25 per year, what percentage of staff is that replacing? And then the second part of that question, that $900, how does that, like, I don't want to see 10 quotes that Chris gets to compare this to, but like, is that a high-end laptop? Is that middle of the road? You know, he gets 3 quotes and 900 is the middle of the road. He doesn't have to
Where the
present his
900
quotes,
comes
but I would just love some context around that. Thank you. Any other questions or motions for technology this evening? All right. If there are none, I just want to do a quick time check with the room. We are approaching 9 o'clock. We have two departments left this evening, or 2 budgets. We have 2 big ones. We have special services and salary and benefits. I'm perfectly fine marching forward, and thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. All right, next we have special services. Special services.
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
You may.
On special services, just for really board awareness, because this was discussed at length at the board meeting last night. The board, in case you didn't watch the board meeting.
Didn't. I'll just tell you right now, I didn't.
That's right, so that's why I'm bringing this up. The board had a discussion last night. We are already over budget on special services. At our next meeting,
How much?
We are already going to be reviewing a warrant
We are
article.
anticipating to be over budget. We had to move in the first week of school.
No, I know, so like order of magnitude, are we?
We are going to be considering a warrant article to draw the $160,000 out of the special fund, because we're going to need that money to cover our special education budget.
Without
Why do you need a
knowing,
warrant article? I
without,
thought you guys can
Yeah.
just go ahead. That's the point of that fund, isn't
We
it?
need a public, that's
because
correct.
Public
we're going to
hearing.
need to ask in March to replenish that.
Yeah,
account.
okay.
You're,
Now-
a public
now
hearing
I
to
guess-
withdraw and then a warrant to
my
replenish.
my
But we
concern,
need to start drafting that warrant article now.
my concern on that is, traditionally, we can use end-of-year funds to absorb these increases. Are we gonna be that tight at the end of the year that you don't think you can absorb this?
Yes.
That was the purpose of the fund, and that's what they
Right,
discussed
but
last night.
the purpose, but the fund hasn't not been touched in like almost ever.
Wow.
We are
So
Because that
be
hasn't
careful.
in worst case scenario this year.
Because in the past, yes, there has been a fund, we've increased it, but we've always been able to absorb those increases. So I'm asking, are we pretty confident that we are gonna be that tight on the budget that we cannot absorb this and we have no choice but to go to that
So
fund?
where we are right now is that when the budget was created for this current year that we're in, it was all for students that we knew were already in placement, right? We had a student move in the first week of school, so we didn't have any of that buffer
Right.
within our own budget. We are obviously working within the constraints of our budget right now. We budget for all of our out-of-district students to go to school for 180 days,
Right.
right? We know not every student goes to school for 180 days.
Right.
For example, if a bus does not go to one of these out-of-district placements for 5 days, we do have a little bit of savings there. So will it be $166,000 we spend over?
Right.
Probably
So I
not,
get-
because we know that there are some kids that aren't gonna make 180 days, right? But we do have a significant placement that was approximately $150,000 that arrived on our doorstep in the first week of school.
But I'll clarify too, though, we've usually drawn down from the excess in the general fund as well. So the reality, the way it has been in the past is you have an over expenditure in special ed. We see what we can swing under our unexpended fund, and then we go to the reserve. So are we just going straight to the reserve without seeing, I guess,
I mean-
overall, do we anticipate that we can?
I guess it's
I'm
it's
asking over here.
philosophy and practice,
Okay.
right? Like, we're trying to stay within the confines of the budget
All right, so
lines
you're
that we have.
only looking at the special ed budget as to whether or not.
Yeah, so we're looking at our out-of-district tuition line, right?
Okay.
Like, this is the expense that we're gonna go over on right there,
Okay.
right? Like, just how I've been taught when you look at these budgetary things,
Right.
is you should try and limit your transfers, especially if they're not likewise lines, right? Like, a transfer from, a supply line to a supply line, like maybe, you need a little more in math supplies versus science supplies in any given year. At least you're in the supplies ballpark. That's a little bit better. The auditors prefer those type of transfers. If we're gonna transfer, we're talking big money now because we're talking out of district placement, $10,000 from a supply line, $15,000 from a personnel line, $20,000 from a furniture line, and we're dumping that into special ed. Yes, can we do that?
All right.
But that is not best practice in that.
All right, but there is a potential that this warrant article could be funded with end-of-year funds. Then, if you choose to not, if you elect not to go to the general fund in the beginning, we can seek to potentially fund it with end-of-year funds.
You're taking the risk that you're gonna have that large a quantity of end-of-the-year funds to
fairness,
offset that.
and I don't mean to.
Yeah, no.
We have other unanticipated expenses as a board that we also have to address this year, such as $30,000 repair at the GMS portables, for replacement,
Ramp.
ramps that weren't planned. We have significant repair.
Failed at
It failed inspection. Right? We have significant repairs, that were identified at Campbell High School.
So are they deteriorating? Because,
They're deteriorating and they're not ADA compliant.
so how did we get them installed and approved to begin with if they aren't ADA compliant?
Cause they were at that
It
time.
changed, yeah.
Can I,
If we're gonna
Not
do that,
grandfathered?
what's that?
Not grandfathered?
Not if we have to do the work that we have to do to replace it. Once we start to replace it, we then have to bring it up to those ADA
can
compliant.
I ask you a question on the special ed fund? Because I think you
Yeah.
spoke to this last night and you started early on tonight talking about this too. Part of the reason, this is a question, a clarifying question. Part of the potential need to draw into the reserve fund for this year is also due to the fact that your anticipated revenue from the state is almost $50,000 less this year.
It is a
that-
strategy a lot of school districts are using to offset that difference in your revenue, is using their reserve funds in special education.
And just
Because
to-
we were not, across the board, we don't anticipate that funding coming in
So-
100%, because it's never 100%.
My concern
But-
would be, what if people say no
Say no to what?
to replenishing the fund?
Yeah, that would not be great.
So I guess
It's
that
a
would be
huge, like.
So, to me, that would be one reason to general fund first. So, I mean,
But
but
if-
again, not knowing what the rest of your concerns are, but if you use the money and then people say, yeah, my pocket's a little lighter this year, no, and then you're in trouble next year.
It is
100% correct.
Just and just before I leave that, the state piece of that. So we anticipated the amount of money that was being provided from the state went from 88% to 67%.
Yep.
Approximately
80%,
those
yeah.
those
The formula
numbers.
is very complicated, but
yeah,
for
those
simple-
numbers
We
are.
shouldn't be surprised.
So I agree. I think the point I wanted to make was, I think when this budget was built, that was $50,000 that was not foreseen that they would not.
Yeah, no, it was
that
built into
revenue,
revenues.
yeah, revenue that they did not foresee having a shortfall of. So
Yep.
I just, yeah,
No, I
and
agree.
out of their control.
No, absolutely, and I think it stinks, but we also know the state has a history of downshifting. How much did they used to pick up of their retirement funds and now don't? So, I mean, the state has a history of pushing funds down to us. So reality is, while it stinks and it's a surprise, in the back of my head, I'm really not surprised because that's their MO.
So I just have one clarifying question, as far as the way that, I completely agree as far as, you want to try to keep it as clean as possible with the auditors. And I'll just throw out just a couple of numbers that I think I heard. So let's say, for example, this new student, that was unexpected, let's just say, I thought I heard $166,000.
And that's
That's
just
what's in the
tuition.
reserve account.
150.
Okay, so.
Ish,
so-
give-
Sure,
That
we'll just
doesn't
use round
factor in
numbers and say, hold
transportation,
on.
right?
So 150, and then at that point, are you planning on going ahead and figuring out, okay, that particular student actually did come out to 150, so therefore we're going to tap the reserve for 150, or is it going to be, we had an extra student, that extra student ended up costing 150,000, however, our special ed budget was
100K.
like, let's say, for example, there's 50K there that was usable, would you tap the 150 for the cost of the student, or the 100 for the cost of the student less the underspend of the existing budget?
Yeah, I think it all depends on when we, and when I say the collective, it's us administratively and the school board, make a decision to take action to deal with this anticipated shortfall.
50,000 less revenue too.
Right.
So, if we were hypothetically at the next board meeting, announce that we're posting this doing that, whatever, we would take more than that because we want to cover ourselves completely with anything else that could happen over the next 6 months, right? If the act and will of the board was to do this at a later date, we would probably be more specific on the number we're taking to account for what we're doing at that given moment.
And then I guess to Mr. Cutter, then if you're planning on going a warrant article, let's say, for example, you pull the trigger early.
Correct.
And you overestimate.
Correct.
Just to, compared to doing it against actuals. I assume that if you have a warrant article asking to taxpayer money to fund it, you can't also have at the top of your warrant article list of the, I get to fund this with end of year money. You get the whole, like, the
Well, I
sequencing
think
of
that's-
it.
exactly. Like, I assume you can't have.
If I'm
two-
understanding your question correctly, and if I'm not, please just jump in. Let's say hypothetically, we elect to do this in the now, right? And for round numbers, let's just say 150. Like, I know it's 166, but for just argument's sake, 150 right now, right? And let's say the year plays out, again, we got 6 months, a lot in special ed can change over the course of 6 months, and we do not touch that 150. And then the warrant article that there is in March is that from end of year, unassigned, we're gonna raise and appropriate the 150 we took out of the special ed account. You're essentially returning the 150 because now it's in your unassigned fund
Okay.
balance
All right.
back into the warrant.
I think Carrie ringing the panic alarm, I was thinking that your warrant article was going to be asking the taxpayer to fund it, not the usual one of, we want approval
Well,
to
we are also,
use end of year
in
funds.
complete transparency, we may be looking for additional money from end of unassigned
they're not
to
sure
put
they're
into
gonna have
that
the money.
account. For example, if we have a set a goal overall, it's at about 166 right now. As these out-of-district placements rise over time, right, it might be smarter, and this is my recommendation to the board, to get that number closer to 200,000 in that trust fund, right? So even if we do this like 166 out, the actual ask on the warrant might be 200 because we're looking to return that hypothetical 166 and then an additional 34 to get that up to 200. So that's the discussions we're having at the board level, right? We talked about some of that last night at the meeting. We'll continue and finalize that at the next board meeting. So that's where we're at figuring it. We need to kind of address that fund in the event, like what we budgeted this year was no buffer, quote unquote buffer, I don't know how else to explain it, in this. If we had to move in next year, September of 2025, we'd need that trust fund,
I think you
so.
said, not until 2027 when you start burning.
The
Obviously, you could still get more
FY
coming in,
27.
but you see some
Yeah.
falling off in
So,
27?
we see 3 kids who graduate or end their time and stuff like that, complete there. So we would anticipate in the proposal for next year's FY 27 budget for our out-of-district line to come down, just based on our current kids who are in placement right now.
Okay. Again, would there be a possibility of doing somewhat of a compromise in terms of, look, you've replenished it a little bit, and then we look at it next year and you put into the budget funding for those 3 students, knowing that then at the end of the year, you will now have the budget of 3 students
good
that
Lord,
can
no.
pretty much get dropped right into the fund to be able to replenish it much higher than what you were hoping to get this year in terms of getting up to 200.
I'm taking note now, so I know what reductions to make next
That
year.
would be too much, though, wouldn't it? That'd be like 450K.
I like you.
You can do it, you know.
I'm trying to follow. I'm
Okay,
trying to follow,
so
yeah.
I guess what I'm saying is, instead of trying to go, you know, you want a goal of 200.
Yeah.
Okay, so what if, you know, for this year, knowing that you've got three, again, perfect world, you got three coming off the books the following year, could we come up a little bit less than your 200
Oh, I see what you're saying.
this year, and then
I see what
in
you're
the
saying.
27 budget, you still budget for 3 or 2 of those kids, knowing that then that money's going to be available, end
Then
of
we
year
get
fund,
accused-
and that warrant goes to the top of the list, so it's funded first for the amount of 2 students, plus you still have the little bit of a buffer of, because I wouldn't want to see it go down to 0 for
So,
1
can
year
I
either.
ask a clarifying question on
Yep.
that? I follow the logic now. In that scenario you just explained, I know we're getting ahead of ourselves here, but in next year's budget process, then you would propose not reducing the special ed budget by the amount of those 3 kids that,
Or maybe it's 2, because like you said, maybe 3 is too much, maybe 2 is a good funding level. But
Okay.
yes, then at that point, you know, and I think that that's part of the partnership that has been attempted to strive
Yeah.
for.
Yeah, I think with the out of district lines, we need to get into a rhythm of a philosophy on how we're budgeting for it, right? And the philosophy we used from this approach last year, and I think it all gets to the same ends, right? Is to specifically budget for our known kids,
Yes.
right? And just to do that. And to kind of remove that budgeting mechanism for the buffer. Like that's what the reserve fund is, right?
That's where we got into
So-
trouble, because the reserve fund wasn't used, and then
Yeah,
it was,
so-
we had a budget for worst case scenario.
Yeah, so if I'm understanding you correctly, and I'm willing to entertain anything with anybody, because ultimately I want all this to work, like, I still, like, I want to think about this, I don't want to jump to any conclusions, but just thinking ahead, I would really like next year, a year from now, sitting in front of you with this line being significantly down, because we're just budgeting for the kids we're expecting in
Right.
FY '27, right? And that we have a healthy trust fund in the event that we need to do something different like that. And the trickiest thing with special ed is it can change so quickly, so rapidly, right? So I appreciate that idea. It was something we can certainly consider with the board when we discuss this. We're going to discuss some relevant warrant article to the special
I will,
ed fund next year.
because
But
we will have words with Scott, and I will have words with, if that comes forward. I'd rather you budget for what you need, and then just say, hey, look, taxpayers, this is what the average cost is of 1 out-of-district placement. Maybe we want 2, just be straight up, say, we'd like to fund it to 2 out-of-district placements in our fund, this is what we need. Just straight up ask, because otherwise it gets a little like, it kind of looks like we're being underhanded in how we're gonna fund it.
I don't
and
know
like that.
if it's being
No,
underhanded.
but if we're taxing people for 2 with the expectation we're gonna later roll it into a trust fund, I'd rather just ask for the money for the trust fund.
What I think one of, like, at least my philosophies when it comes to this stuff is end of year, having unassigned end of year balance is important. We can't ask for more money, right? So like you have to have
Right.
some left over at the end. But we can't put ourselves in the situation, and there was some uniqueness to the budget cycle that just finished up and the tax rate that just went up, right? There was a $500,000 that got returned off the top because of the land. That hopefully will not happen again, right? But having that unassigned fund balance last year of like $1.4 million, where like 600,000 of that was related to special education, is something we're hoping to prevent, because that creates these yo-yos in the tax rate, where we'd rather have a steady tax rate. And I think we can all agree that that's the best approach from this philosophy to do that. So
Those
that,
escrows would appreciate that.
right, so I would rather us, with our out-of-district tuition line, that's the one that we're speaking of right now, we're coming in slightly under every year with what we've budgeted, because that means we've budgeted appropriately for that. And it's based upon the kids we have. And if we do have those emergency situations, we have our trust fund to kind of fall back on. Because it is a tough look, and I don't think it's an underhanded, I don't think there's an underhandedness of it, but when like last June, you're returning, you know, not all 600 of that was out of district money, but at least half of it was out of district. That's a tough thing to kind of turn back over. But I guess, and that comes back to philosophy. Other districts, other BAs, other special ed directors will buffer in for kids, and I think they're probably in different districts that have more volatile moving in and moving out populations, you know, so, I mean, we're getting way in the weeds of this type
No,
of
but
stuff.
I think
I appreciate hearing your
Yeah.
philosophy.
I agree, and I don't want to speak for everybody on this committee, but I think the general consensus of this group, for the most part, has been budget for what we need and the kids that we know that are there, and use the reserve fund for those unexpected instances like we had at the beginning of this year. That's what it's there for. Let's fund it appropriately when we need to. And again, to your point, if we see the trend of those out of district costs going up, then we know that 150 might need to be 200 to cover the one unexpected student coming in. Like, I think that's the right strategy.
And I think once you know, this was a large part of our discussion, not just around special ed, about all of our reserve funds and trust funds last night, is utilizing those in a more effective manner and having that as kind of the mechanism to do various things, right? Like buildings and repairs stuff, like putting more significant money into that account. So when we have known quantities. Let's take a giant project like a roof. If we know we're projecting out to do a roof to one of our buildings 5 years from now, let's start stacking the money into that reserve fund. So we're just taking the money out of that when that significant number comes to be repaired, you know, and using that kind of philosophy of trying to, I feel like we've pounded the table on this a lot in our short time here about having a capital improvement plan where we can see over 20 to 30 years the stuff happening. So we can put this money in our reserve funds and then show people that we're utilizing that to have these
And
costs.
to your point, it levels things out. You're not going
Exactly,
for
you're
the
not having the
massive,
yo-yo of the tax rate.
we need $1 million to replace our roof, but we've already have half of it saved. Less of it, you know, or we knew that it was a 30-year roof, and every year we put away 1/30th of it.
Yeah.
We're
So,
paying ourselves interest instead of paying.
dude,
Like we've been talking about for years.
just yes.
So,
So, music's my ears.
I
let me
want
tell
to, in the interest of time, and Mr. Taylor keeping me on task, I want to bring us back to special services. Do we have any motions this evening for special services? And thank you for the great background information and healthy discussion around that. Any motions this evening for special services?
Well, I think I'm not comfortable making any motions currently, simply because with a new leadership and a new philosophy, I'm trying to give more of a benefit of the doubt. In the past, I'd be like, well, I know how you budget, I know you spend 92%, I will take 5% of that. So, I'd like to see how, for right now, I have more confidence in our current team that what is not spent, should there be any left, would be returned. And so, currently I have no reductions, as much as I want to. I'm willing to let this play out for the new team to see how the record builds.
Any additional comments, questions, or motions this evening for special services? Going once, going twice?
Quick question.
Yes, sir. So close, so close.
2722, you have first student, one out of district student to be determined.
What page is this, Mr. Leary?
Oh, I'm sorry, it's the last page. Just says to be determined. Is that the new one that you got?
That indicates 5. I mean,
I got.
I see what you're saying.
One,
The very bottom
this
one
this is
determined.
yeah, I know what this is. I'm gonna give me a moment so I don't say anything I can't say publicly.
no, there's 5 students requiring transportation.
Is it being used?
Yes, it is,
In the discussion.
and we just don't know the exact location
Right.
of said.
But, so
'Cause
there's
there's a change coming.
transportation's tied to 5 different students based on this.
Any other final questions or motions for special services this
I
evening?
told you it was quick.
No, I know. Other than I think I should switch my job to becoming like a first student driver.
All right, we're gonna move
We need
to
a van. Not to like, it's not in the budget this year.
No, so seriously, it's been.
We need a van.
Something like that, right? But one of these is on the way to my husband's work. I'm like, dude, we can just sidebar this. And I don't, I'm liking where you're going on, would we violate any transportation contracts? If
We
had-
violate any transportation
Because
contracts.
does not, our
By
current.
doing what?
our
I
farm-
don't think we would be violating our first contract,
Okay.
like with that, because we wouldn't and couldn't by law use it for regular education, transportation to and
Okay.
from school.
So I just want to make sure we don't put ourselves like, oh, we have this awesome van.
Yeah.
Now we're in violation of contract by not giving them right of first refusal. So
Right.
that is, I want to make sure that if we do that, 'cause I like the idea.
Yeah.
especially when you consider how much we're spending on transportation.
Yeah.
If we could probably hire a driver for a lot less than that combined. So,
You would just have your own staff trained.
no, absolutely. And so I just want to make sure, I like the idea. Would we be, and if we're not in violation, then that is definitely something we should look at.
Yeah. There are rules about the regular transportation to and from school from home.
Right.
But once you leave that departure, there's more flexibility in what you can do.
All right, moving to our last budget for the evening, salaries and benefits. This one has several pages, and
Mr. Chairman, if I
yes, you may.
This one?
The other.
No, that's that's the corresponding names to numbers. It's the one that's it's 45 pages.
The last one.
Yeah.
It's the personnel.
Go ahead,
tab.
Mr. Cutter.
The other discussion last night, when the board was talking about warrant articles, was a discussion on employee benefits reserve fund. As you might recall, this was a reserve fund that was established to park money for known employees leaving the district.
Yeah.
I'm delighted to say that for next year, a potential warrant article, there's a known add to that fund of $2,000, right?
Somebody decided to stay longer?
So the value of that is our employees are staying,
That's awesome.
right? So the years of the attrition cuts in employees leaving are not happening next year, right?
So you're trying to say, don't make a $200,000 cut
I'm
for
j- I'm
attrition?
saying-
Don't
what
make
I'm
the typical Cutter
what I'm
cut
s-
when he was in budget of
When he was on the side of the
$400,000 for attrition, basically is what you're saying.
Yes, that's exactly it.
So in other words, not old
culture-
Andrew, be new Andrew.
The culture of the climate, right, is improving, and we're seeing that in the numbers in the budget.
So you're telling me it wasn't all about the money?
So
I
just-
do have just one quick clarifying question. Mr. Cutter, I thought you said at the beginning the benefits fund. Right? It sounds more like the retirement fund, not the benefits
Well,
fund.
retirement-
The benefits fund is the one for somebody decides to go family plan.
They merged
and you weren't
them.
expecting it.
It's all
They
the same.
merged?
It's all one. If you read the terms of the warrant article, yeah,
And that $2,200 increase is based on the fact that people who choose to stay,
person
their
who's staying a little bit
benefits
longer.
would
Right.
They have another year
their
added
cost
on.
would go up. Got it. Okay.
You also don't know what your attrition is going to be anyway, right now.
You never know, right?
No. Because even if they sign a contract, they just let you know, like, no, I'm not staying.
I think the tricky thing with attrition, if we want to just have a quick conversation about it.
I actually have a question about attrition,
Yeah.
so yes, please.
We have some actual numbers too from history and stuff, but and I think one of these meetings I talked about it, so if it wasn't with you, it was with the board, I'm sorry, but is what is happening, or at least from my observations from a couple different places, is you're not getting the kids out of college at the same rate that you did before, right?
And
So
that was going to be my follow-up question.
Yeah.
You said that delta has closed up.
it is.
Do
So-
you have that number?
So I have it in raw numbers from attrition, and then we have it broken down a little bit more by staff. But just a raw number from from last year to this year, we reduced, this is all of our staff, and we're pretty much, we have open positions, but they're the same positions that have remained open, of 102, a little over 102, can you say this number for me? I've been up since 3, I can't even talk straight. 102,000. Yes, sorry, I couldn't spit out the
That's
thousand.
102,000 of attrition. What is the number of employees that make up that? Because ideally, what I'm looking for is, look, tell me if, Andrew's old math, and I'm not holding anything accurate, just, let's say he said $50,000 a person, and you're telling me that now, I can't get somebody coming out of college for $50,000 less than the person that retired. I just want to know what the
25
difference
staffing
is,
changes
and then we could go ahead and say, so per person, we should expect that attrition is really only 20,000.
Yep.
And then I can take Mr. Cutter's advice that you're doing a great job as far as reducing the amount of attrition. So maybe he used to figure 10, and maybe now I'll consider 5.
So if
I could just get
yeah,
those.
if I'm understanding that correctly, we had 25 different staffing position changes last year, right? And this was a range of support staff through professional staff, including SAU positions, right? We have it by position from the LEA grouping, which is where you're going to see the most significant savings from that. It's 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, no, that's not 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15. 15 would be in that LEA group. And that's your classic attrition saving of you have the teacher retired who's top on your pay scale, right? And then you're replacing them with a kid out of college, right, who's going to be bottom on your pay scale. And you can maybe get a savings of. Yeah, and I think what you're seeing is from districts where we're hiring, we're not having just the applicants. So you have a qualified applicant, and they might be coming from and have 7 or 8 years of experience that they're followed up, and they're in the middle of your scale rather than the end of your scale. I mean, we try to I was involved a little bit in hiring at the end of last year, and I've been obviously involved in hiring other places. You try and make smart decisions with your hiring. There's value to having a diverse staff, right? You want some younger, newer teachers to offer some fresh perspectives, fresh blood, right? We have a couple of really talented young educators who are only a couple of years out of college that we hired this past spring who are doing awesome. You also want to mix with some of those veteran staff members so you don't lose some of your good stuff happening in your schools, right? So it's that kind of like balance
So
of it
let
all.
me ask it a different way then. If we
Yeah.
take a look at it as, can you tell me what you're looking at as far as the delta? Because unfortunately, when I take a look at this 102 number,
Yeah.
I'm hoping that then you don't have massive turnover as far as, in the superintendent office and all the other ones. So that number's skewed
I am
in
hoping
my
we all
mind.
come back
So
to the
if I could
SAU
just kinda
office.
get a
Wink, wink.
A conservative teacher number?
Yeah, so
A
it's
conservative non-teacher number?
of what we're expecting to lose?
No. What that delta is right now between, teacher
Oh,
that
breaking it down a
retires
little bit
down
different.
to a teacher that you hire, and that way you could also blend it in around, well, sometimes I get a veteran because a veteran's better off, and sometimes I get out of college, but
Yeah, I
that
think I
delta
know.
is close.
Yeah.
So like, if you can just tell me that a teacher typically is 15,000 and a non-teacher is 5,000, that's really all I'm looking at.
Yeah, we would have to, we have it, we can do it.
Yeah.
I won't be able to do it right now.
That's fine.
You have the
But to-
numbers, you need to do the math.
Yeah, we have numbers to do the math, they're right here.
Got it.
From a general standpoint, just to give you not to pick on 1920, because there's probably some COVID involved here too, but even, maybe 17, 18 is a better year to go
I think
back
you said
to.
1920. That caught Miss Ames off guard back there.
Yeah.
I know it's been 3 a.m.
Yeah.
I think you meant 2020. Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know. What did I say? The school year 1920.
Oh, I got you.
School
I
year
got you.
1920.
Miss Ames heard 1920, and I saw her face, and
Yeah.
I got you.
So,
2019, 2020.
but
I
I'm
got
actually going to dip back to 2017, 2018, because that was
I used some
pre-COVID.
teachers in Litchfield in 1920.
So the,
Brian, I'm on the phone if you need anything.
I might be tapping you in here. So what your savings were in 2017, 2018, and that kind of crossover was 263,000, a little bit over that. So it's come down like a significant amount from that. Even from 23 to 24, like from 20, like that bridge of years, the year prior, it was 180,000. So we've seen that kind of decline. There was a spike in that end of that COVID year because I think a lot of people were
It's
like,
an
I'm good.
anomaly.
Like,
Throw that out.
we're doing this hybrid teaching stuff. I'm good. But yeah, we've seen that steady decline since then.
Except we were mostly open.
Thank you for that
Yeah.
background information, Mr. Cutter, Mr. O'Connell. Good questions. Do I have any additional questions or discussion or motions for salaries and benefits this evening?
Not currently. I will probably next week, but not currently.
How many open positions?
Taylor?
do we have now?
I have one,
Holly would know that. How many open positions do we have now?
Holly, do you know offhand how many open positions we currently have?
Yes, we have, so in the budget, you'll see a couple more open positions than we actually have right now. At the time of the budget, we had 43 open positions. That's, a lot of it is paraprofessional positions. And that's besides some of the ones that we actually cut, we had 31 para positions. Besides that, we have a couple, 3 professional positions, and then in that current budget, you're gonna see 7 custodian positions. We have filled 4 of those at this point in time.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Holly, this is John David. I don't know if you can hear me. You originally said 43 open, but then you said 31. So is it
We reduced 12 in the budget, right?
right? So I got you. So the in the current proposed budget, with those reductions that you're talking about, you would have 31 unfilled positions, assuming nothing was filled in between, right? I'm just wrapping my head around that, right? No? You currently have 43 unfilled positions today. Is that a true statement?
Is that a true statement, Holly?
Today, I have, hold on. Today, I have 28 open positions.
28. Where'd the 43 come from?
Where's the 43?
43 was what was total in the budget, and then,
I got you.
They
that,
cut some.
before we cut paraprofessional positions.
And
I
we've
got-
hired some since.
I got you.
Hired
Thank you.
just people.
So the 28 open reflects the reduction of 10 paraprofessional positions that you took out of the budget.
So Holly, if I'm understanding correctly, I'm going to clarify with Holly. That 43, we reduced by 10 paras, so now we're down to 33. Since we
Correct.
prepared the budget, we've hired 5 people, so we're down to 28 open positions.
Yes, that is correct.
Got it. Thank you.
Sounds like out-of-district placement should be covered.
Any other questions, comments, or motions this evening for salaries and benefits?
Can I clarify one thing with the open positions? Holly, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
Some of these open positions, particularly the professional, the 3 kind of professional positions, we have to then do contracted services currently to offset it. So to give you an example, we have a single school psychologist who left for a different opportunity earlier this year. So that's an open position currently right now. We still have to provide those services. So that money is being essentially spent. It's been transferred over to contracted services, some of it for the time being. It's an open position. We would love to hire someone full-time for that position. It'll be tough right now. We'll have more luck in the spring. But it's not that that money's not being spent. Now, some of these paraprofessional positions, that is true. That money is not necessarily being spent at this exact moment.
Out of the 28, how many of them, one way or another, is either an employee or you're gonna have to pay
Yeah.
contracted services?
I'll get a more concrete number. There's definitely some of those. The school site comes to mind, OTPT comes to mind, the case manager position comes to mind. I'll get with Holly and get a more concrete number of that, but there's definitely at least 3 that right off the top of my head, I know we've transferred money over from to contracted services for.
All right,
Get us an idea of how long you've been open? 2 years, 3 years?
so, I see a note that there's been a reduction in raises from 4% to 3%. Has that
What?
been carried throughout?
What page are you on, Ms.
Well, I'm on
Douglas?
35 in particular, but it looks like, in the past, we had the pool that was divvied up, and now they've been added to the individual line items. So I see it on a number of different line items. So all the non-unions were reduced from 4% to 3%?
No.
Is that a school board?
It was a cut, yes. We split it up. So the support staff non-union are remaining at a 4% increase, and that is the same increase that we're going to be in the LSSA agreement. So for people who are not, they're not necessarily like positions because then they'd be in the LSSA, but they're that support staff kind of position. Non-support staff people, such as, myself, an administrator, our raises were reduced to 3% by the school board.
And Carrie, you're seeing that on each line because the school board made those cuts, so it was after, it was like the next step in the budget process. So originally there was 4% budgeted right in each person's line, so I went through each line and reduced the amount of money based off of their cut.
So the current LSA contract provides 4%,
The one that was negotiated and agreed upon,
but not yet confirmed by the voters.
correct.
So is it premature to include a 4% if we don't know if the voters are going to approve?
We should budget 4%. My advice is to budget 4% because that's essentially what that contract is that we're proposing through and agreed upon. It's going to be on as a warrant article.
And I would also say no because you have people that would necessarily not fall in support staff, maybe the LSSA, but more along the teacher contract in other districts. They're not in ours, but your social workers, who work directly with your guidance counselors are part of the union, your social workers, your mental health clinicians, those are not part of the union, and they could work directly alongside with teachers who were negotiated 5 to 9%.
Yeah, I know. So, all right, do we,
Any additional?
I guess my question then would be, how much extra are we looking at between those positions, 3 versus 4%? I'm just curious as to how much above and beyond what we would normally budget are we currently budgeting? So normally we would budget 3%. Some positions are being budgeted at 4.
Okay,
I'm
gotcha.
curious to know what that delta is.
difference for those positions, yeah. We have that number, I don't have it at my fingertips, but we did all that math out, so we can provide that next time. Unless, Holly, you have it at your fingertips.
I'm looking to see right now.
There's a number of follow-ups, we can get that over.
That's fine.
Yeah, we
That's
have
fine.
it, I just don't
I'm
have
just
it right
curious.
here.
Doesn't matter
When we
make a
talked about it at the
reduction.
board level, we
I
had
mean, if we're
it.
talking 10 grand, it's one thing. We're talking 100 grand, we're gonna have some words.
I want to say
No.
it was like 20, but again,
Yeah,
don't quote me.
Hold
I
on.
will say it's a lot clearer than it used to be.
We can,
Yeah.
Holly, don't feel like you have to dig for that. We can get it as a
We'll
follow-up.
meet again
that's fine.
next week, so
No,
don't
I got
worry.
a spreadsheet, I'll be fast. It is $13,242.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Taylor, did you have a
I did
question?
one question, then yes, I will
No,
have
for
a
the
motion.
ones that are
Just
4%.
the ones that are 4%.
In the original slide deck that you put together, there was a slide about the other personnel, getting that added back into the budget, salary of non-union for $117,302. That particular salary of non-union, was that factoring in the existing LSSA contract that was approved in March in their rate, or are you projecting?
So that other personnel line that was 117 was anyone not in a collective bargaining salary increase for them. These 3 and 4% increases, yeah.
Anybody out of LSSA or LEA?
Correct. So that whole pool of people, including us administratively, supports that people, like Holly listed a bunch of positions there. That all totaled up to that.
Did you have a motion,
Yes, I
Mr.
do
Taylor?
have a motion. I'd like to make a motion as far as bottom line personnel. Make a reduction of $140,000.
I have a motion by Mr. Taylor for a bottom line reduction of salary and benefits for $140,000. Do I have a second?
For discussion.
Second by Ms. Douglas. Discussion.
All right, so I'm taking a look at it and saying, you're telling me you've got 28 open positions. I'm gonna go ahead and go a little bit conservative and say, you know what, 5 of them are contract positions. And then the reason for my cut is I'm expecting that out of the 28, you probably aren't gonna be able to fill all of them. So I'm leaving a 30% margin, so that's 7 positions. And I'm even taking the positions and saying that they're at a lower pay rate, only 20,000, which is probably somewhere in the neighborhood of, anybody that only works during the regular school year, not full-time,
they were
at
listening.
about 6 hours. You calculate 20K times the 7 positions, that's how I get to my
So
$140,000.
you're taking a 30%, you're taking,
A non-fill rate of 30%.
got it.
I think I'd have to know what the average cost is. I thought they were lower than 20. Like,
Well, I took a look at it and said it's 180 days, times, I think, 6.5 hours, times what the average para rate is,
Alright.
to get to my number.
I guess I just hadn't done because this one says vacant para, the cut for reduction is 10,000. So I guess I would want to make sure that the actual average is 20,000 and not some
Well,
number
but the
lower.
problem is I don't know what the average is gonna be. It's gonna be all over the place based on, there could be a teacher in there that doesn't get filled, and that's gonna account for, more than one person than what I
Right.
account for.
Because this one says.
If anybody wants to change my math and make an amendment
It
to the
doesn't
motion,
necessarily, because here's
I'm open to it.
here's 3 vacant ones at 52 plus the other thing, so you might not be that far off. I don't know what the average is.
Mr. Cutter.
Well, I think, my comment to this is that we are seeing, again, positive momentum in the district. We are seeing staff that is coming into our district, that's wanting to stay in our district. And I think that with that momentum, it's attracting new staff to our district. And the hope is that these open positions get filled at a higher rate, especially as the school year wraps up.
I think it'd be,
Douglas's point, some of them are higher rate than what I've calculated.
I think it'd be interesting to see too, because one of the cells on full-day kindergarten is what we're supposed to start seeing a reduction in this. I know that we were hit by COVID, so there is that. But one of the selling points on full-day kindergarten was that with early intervention, we should start seeing a reduction in special ed. We haven't seen that reduction yet. So I'm curious to see, as things start normalizing, are we going to see a reduction? In which case, then maybe we don't need as many paras in the future.
Who knows, right?
Any additional discussion on the motion at hand?
I like where he's going with it, I'm just not sure I'm comfortable with it at this date.
I'm in a similar spot. I appreciate the diligence and the math behind this and your thinking through this process. I also agree with a lot of what Mr. Cutter said, and I think it's also reflected in some things that you said, Ms. Douglas, as it has to do with the special education fund. I think the trust, the rapport, the culture plays into this. At the same point in time, I think we have to balance that with the taxpayers, and this is a large increase. And so that's where I sit. I think this number, where I sit today, might be a little higher than what I'm comfortable with.
Well, just for paras.
Happy to have somebody amend it. That's why I laid out exactly how the math is.
I appreciate that.
And we cut 32,000 so far out of the budget.
I know.
This is the last one.
I know, but we have another meeting.
Are we gonna end at 32,000?
No.
Sounds great.
I mean, I think
Sounds great. I think I heard someone adjourn, right? Is that what I
I
heard?
might get a standing ovation. But you know what?
Hey,
I'll
time
also
out.
get crucified by the taxpayer.
On point. What was your number again?
140,000.
Well, it was 140. All right.
Seven remaining positions at 20K each.
I'm gonna make a motion to amend Mr. Taylor's motion and make a bottom line reduction of $92,000. So a motion by myself, second by Mr. Taylor.
Rationale.
Discussion. I just took his logic and took it down to a 20% instead of 30% on the fill rate. Like, just trying to factor in the fact that I do think we are going to fill more positions based on the culture, and balancing that out with the need to try to reduce the overall
Can I
budget.
amend your amendment?
You're
Well,
more
we
than
have to
welcome
vote
to
for it.
amend
We
my
have to
amendment.
vote on.
To vote on the motion to amend, and then you can.
We have
but-
to complete this one, and then you can amend it.
All right. Any additional discussion?
Darts at a wall.
I was gonna say 110.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say 110, but.
Oh.
yours is
Now,
fine.
again, that was the old Andrew would
Yours is
have
fine.
increased it.
All right. So this is a motion to amend. Mr. Hayes,
Yes.
Mr. Cutter,
Yeah, I'll amend it.
Mr. Leary,
Yes.
Ms. Douglas.
Yes.
I am a yes. Mr. LaPlante.
Yes.
Mr. Taylor.
Yes.
Mr. Burke.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0. So now we're voting on the motion to bottom line
Unless you
reduction.
wanted to make an amendment.
Yeah, I mean, you have the opportunity. Now's the time. Okay. The motion is to a bottom line reduction of salaries and benefits of $92,000. Any new discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote. Mr. Hayes,
Yes.
Mr. Cutter,
No.
Mr. Leary,
Yes.
Ms. Douglas.
Yes.
I'm a yes. Mr. LaPlante,
Yes.
Mr. Taylor,
Yes.
and Mr. Burke.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-1. Any additional motions, discussions this evening? Questions?
None tonight, just once you give me the attrition information, I'll have a motion for that.
Yeah. We might send that in advance in case we're not giving you exactly what you want, or we'll try to, I should say, send it in advance to everyone, just so if it's not exactly what you're looking for, we can adjust.
So, here's my thinking as to where we are in our process right now. I believe if Mr. Taylor's math is correct and my math is correct, we had reductions tonight that total $124,000. Please double check. 124,550. Thank you. We have a lot of follow-up items from tonight, a lot of questions that we had, a lot of information that we're waiting to hear back on as it pertained to water, propane, a lot of other things. My original thinking coming in tonight was, let's get through it, let's stay till 10 o'clock and potentially not meet next week. But I am of the feeling that because of all of the outstanding information that we're waiting on and some additional questions that I think we're gonna have, that we should meet next week.
Yes.
To receive that information, to go through it, any potential additional motions that may come out of that. So that's my thinking.
I agree.
Okay. All right. So with that, we'll conclude our school voting for this evening. Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone who
stayed.
stayed and joined. We really appreciate it.
Great questions, sir.
Um,
So for next week, do we have, revenue projections for the school side? Or a draft default budget?
I'm working on that now.
is that something we would have next week?
I don't think so. The board hasn't even seen it.
Do you think we would have it when we review warrant articles on the 19th?
Potentially,
Yeah.
because the board can have an opportunity to review.
Yeah, on the 18th.
To meet on the 18th, right? Okay.
I do think we got to work on it, and there's a big formula. And I'm not an expert in prepping default budgets.
They're not fun, because there's a lot of gray, like, I will tell you what I think should be in it, and you will
Right.
say, but there's gray area here, and then that'll be fun.
My understanding is that you carry over all your current positions into the default budget.
No,
And
no, they changed the law on that. It's, if a reduction is taken in your proposed budget, you take it in the default budget as well.
okay, do you know when they changed that?
Last year or the year before that.
Okay, then I will not say any more because I had a different understanding. So-
Yes, so, yep, that was changed as a result of some local decisions that have been made, and some local legislators helped lobby through a
Yep.
change. And then contracts remain, one-time expenses are removed, and other things are generally level funded. In the past, they carried the electric rates for the days the school is open. If there's an increase that didn't get
Yeah.
carried on the days it would be closed.
My big thing where I was going to go with that is with the para positions that we're reducing.
Yeah.
Like,
So my understanding is that if it's removed in the proposed budget, it is also removed in the default budget. Because if you're proposing you don't need it, then you don't need it in the default, is
Sounds
the
like a
logic.
good item to get clarification on.
Yeah.
In the interest of time, I'm gonna, unless Mr. Cutter has any pressing updates from the school,
No pressing up.
I'm gonna move us to member input, new business. Any updates from school facilities committee? As I know that yesterday was the closing of the survey. I did hear.
Believe the meeting, I forgot when the meeting was
I
scheduled.
did hear
I thought so.
Mr. Shoemaker make a plea that I think don't hold me to this number, but during the school board meeting last night, there were 866 responses. The goal all along had been to get to 900. I don't know whether we crossed that threshold or all last night, but
No idea.
again, kudos for the multiple ways that people had an opportunity and the amount of time they had to
They
respond.
showed up in people's houses after the election. I mean, everybody in my household is very cynical to begin with, and we're like, well, kudos to them. They've done everything they possibly can at this point.
Yeah.
Like-
I don't want to steal your thunder, Ms. Douglas, but I know the committee's meeting in order to start reviewing.
Yes.
When are they meeting? Say next
I
week.
think it's next Tuesday. I'm hoping
Sometime
it's
next
Tuesday.
week.
I'm hoping it's Tuesday, because I'll be here Thursday.
I'm doing this day by day. There's a play tomorrow night I got to go to. That's my next-
Any,
Keep it if you like.
Mr. Burke?
Yep.
Oh, go ahead, Ms.
No,
Douglas.
so
Anything else?
Just so everybody knows though, like, even though
Hold on. Not adjourned yet. Hold on.
No, even though addresses are requested to ensure like the integrity of it, when we review the information, that information will not be provided, as I understand it, to the committee. It will only see like tallied responses. So we will not be like, oh, my neighbor voted this way, shame.
Yeah,
It's gonna be as anonymized as possible.
Thank you.
That's my understanding too.
Mr. Burke, any updates, capital improvement?
Yeah, we met the other day.
I don't know.
So just a few things. I guess the selectmen are going to consider a bonding for the police station. I know there's no conversation that will be taking place, and so we'll see what comes out of that.
This is gonna be a painful bill, like,
Yeah.
painful warrant.
So as far as the paving for the highway department, it was originally $287,000, now it's $303,743. And that money will be coming from the yearly $200,000 allocation for street paving, which won't take place next year. There's a $50,000 that came from the House of Representatives, or someone voted for emergency paving.
Okay.
So So there's 50,000, and there's 70,000 from the underspend this year. So that's where the money will come from to do that paving.
So the paving where? Just the regular paving or?
Well, down around the whole highway department and.
Oh, that one, yeah.
The recycling center.
Well, the reality is it's still lower than what we used to do. We used to match the 200,000 block grant. so-
Right, but you're not gonna have any streets paved in the town next year. Then what they decided to do with the, police vehicles is one will go to warrant, one will come out of the unassigned fund balance, and one will be in the budget.
You guys really want to
It's
default
like
budget, don't you?
150,000 in the unassigned fund.
No, they have the money.
No, that's right. I did put it in the budget. That's 3.
What, they can't get more than
I
one?
know, it's just,
Eh,
seems a little high.
Anything else capital improvement?
No, the other 2.
What's that?
Anything else from capital improvement?
Just we went through the ranking as far as, the projects that are here.
And that hasn't been presented to the Board of Selectmen yet, has it? Or
No,
has- it
but I
hasn't?
mean,
Okay.
the two that changed, basically was the police cruisers, which is urgent. and
Right,
The paving, which is urgent. And then they removed one of the trucks, the, 350, I believe, took it off.
So with the roads then are just being delayed a year? Because don't we usually, they have a schedule in theory. Were they okay, I guess, we can talk to them, I guess, when they present, that they're okay with putting out the most, because generally they pay for what they feel is the most critical ones. Are they really okay with pushing those off a year?
You guys are good to leave.
Yep. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for all your help,
Thank
for
you.
answers.
Yeah, no problem.
Unless you want to stay for public input.
We'll just say thank you for the process. I know this was a tough meeting. No, but genuinely, this was obviously tough questions, but we appreciate the collaboration.
Thank you.
and,
We appreciate it too.
Sorry I can't speak straight at this hour, but hopefully.
You've had a long day.
Thank you. Anybody else public input? Seeing none, I'll close public input. Our next meeting will be next Thursday, December 12th, here, 7 PM, Town Hall, at the fire station, where we will continue any school budget voting and get information back from this evening. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So made.
Motion by Ms. Douglas,
Second
second
by-
by Mr. Hayes. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstained, motion carries 8-0-0. Have a good evening, everybody. Thank you.
Do my best to try to join next week.
What was that?